Because you got powerful legs. How'd you get the physique? Was it gym or how'd you get the physique?
I've always been.
She's actually not got powerful legs. Do you shower in your dressing room? Do you have a shower on the day of a fight or not? Tell us about the tattoos.
Shut the fuck up, you little prick.
But then I've got the Phoenix.
Hey, prick.
So I'll take it from Bob every day of the week.
Absolute disgrace.
I'm sure no one will mind.
Move him out of here, there.
Ricky Hatton didn't go over for his fighter because he risked getting abducted and sold into sexual
I never said that.
Both have been rape victims. I'm not watching Frank Buglioni live on Saturday night. You're out of your mind.
Jesus Christ, get yourself a life.
He's actually a priest.
Yeah.
It's because his brother John Fury eye gouged him.
What have I told you all this time? He's going to end up sucked out, fucked out, looking for a handout.
Boxing nutters messenger group. I'm gonna be the king.
J-Pump, you know what I'm saying?
Welcome, folks, to the 611th edition of the Boxing Asylum Nuthouse. Proud to be with you guys every Sunday, 8 o'clock in the UK, 12 Pacific time, and you can catch us the next day wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And also, check us out if you want to join the group in the WhatsApp and all the extra bonuses. Choose your level at patreon.com/Boxing Asylum. Anyhow, we had a couple of enjoyable cards yesterday, one from Mexico, one from Las Vegas. But let's get into the one from Mexico first. It was nights of rematches, and this one, another close one. William Zepeda and Tevin Farmer going 12 rounds this time, with the majority decision going the direction of William Zepeda in a fight I think that he won. I guess maybe you could make a case for that draw. Farmer thought he got robbed. I disagree with that. I respect him a lot, but I think you're pushing it at 6 rounds, let alone giving him 7. But there was a couple of rounds where Zepeda seemed to really hurt Farmer. It was shocking that he was able to make his way through, considering one of them was the second round. Zepeda might have been robbed of a knockdown call. Farmer thought he was robbed of one in the 12th, but the replay kind of showed that was a cuffing shot. Thought Zepeda had a better argument for that and the extra point that would have gone with it. But anyhow, it was another entertaining fight between these guys. It was they just have a great contrast of styles that blends well in the ring. Farmer was finding nice single shots with the left hand, even though apparently he had hurt it early on in the fight. He found a nice jab in the middle rounds too. But just the absolute onslaught and the volume of Zepeda ultimately seemed to do the job at the end of the day, and the body work in particular. Are you satisfied with the scorecards in this one, Justin? And if not, how did you score it?
I'm like you. I don't think you can call robbery on that. It was a close fight, but I don't think you could call robbery. And for me, the fight kind of went. I think was it Farmer come out and said that he thought this was a clearer win for him than the first fight. I don't think it was all that. You got to give Farmer credit because it was. I think it was the second or third round, and I don't know if he broke the hand, but the hand was completely. He couldn't really throw it. So you got to give him credit for that, because I think it was after round 4 or 5, his corner yelled, "If you don't throw the hand, we're calling the fight." Like they were telling him, you cannot, basically, you can't keep Zepeda off, and we're not going to let you fight with one hand And Farmer did. I mean, he threw it. You could tell after every round that he was in like really bad pain because he would walk over there and sit down. You could see it was killing him. But for me, this was another, Farmer lost, but he didn't lose anything, in my opinion. Everybody knows he was basically fighting with one hand and he was just throwing it. And Zepeda, for me, there's more questions. He fought Farmer who was really down to one arm for most of the fight, and he still couldn't convincingly beat him. He still had to have a little drama, and the fight was still too close. So, in my opinion, I think Zepeda is what he is now. I know I might be jumping the gun, but I wasn't really that impressed. Yes, I know Farmer is a good fighter, but Farmer was down to one arm, and
but he landed a lot of interesting shots with that one arm. That's what I'm saying.
That's why maybe it went numb and he couldn't feel it anymore. But still, it's just maybe me undervaluing Farmer. But Zepeda, I think this is his level now. I think Farmer, that's where he's at. They're very even. I think they're talking about the Shakur fight coming up. He's not going to beat Shakur Stevenson, even though I'm not the biggest Shakur fan. Shakur is a better version of Farmer. They do kind of the same things. And look at the success Farmer's had. I think Shakur is going to have the same type of success. Now, the difference is what Farmer showed, can Stevenson show that? Because Farmer showed he's tough. I mean, he took a lot of shots and kept going. Can Stevenson take those type shots? I don't know. Or I guess the big question would be, will he get hit by those same shots?
Well, that's the thing is you have to give Farmer some credit on that because he's got a good chin. It's not like he didn't get touched by.
No, Zepeda landed some bombs. Maybe Zepeda, here's the question for you. Is it Zepeda, is his power not as real as that we thought, or is Farmer's chin that good, or is it a little mix of both?
I think Farmer's chin is just that good because I think maybe early in his career before he kind of found his stride, he might have been stopped. I can't remember off the top of my head.
He was. I know you're talking about. He was by somebody.
Yeah, just random, like way earlier in his career. But the Farmer that we've known, the guy, once he became a contender, then champion, and now in the later part of his career, kind of a very strong gatekeeper. He's never been knocked out. I'm trying to think if I've ever seen him dropped even legitimately.
Zepeda,
I think Zepeda did last night.
You could tell Zepeda hurt him a couple of times.
I thought he dropped him and the ref bobbled the call.
Did.
It was that fifth or sixth round.
So Zepeda got to him a couple of times, and then Farmer just decided, hey, I've got to just stand here, pretty much. And I give Farmer, like I said, in my opinion, Farmer, even though he lost, he's still kind of winner for me because he showed, I think he just showed a lot more than Zepeda did, and Zepeda won. Zepeda is, I'm not going to use the word I was disappointed. I just expected something a little bit different from him, but he did pretty much the same he did in the first. Yeah, he landed more shots in the first fight, but I don't know where, I don't think he's ready for any, like right now, is Zepeda versus Keyshawn? I think Keyshawn knocks him out. I think he's too fast and just too much. Keyshawn is like Farmer times 3.
It would probably be a mercy stoppage.
Yeah.
If you I don't think it would be, like Zepeda flat on his ass.
Because Keyshawn is like
1,000 cuts.
Keyshawn is a younger, 3 times better version of Farmer is right now,
but also smaller.
Yeah. So you're right. I mean, that could. I just think Keyshawn has too much for Zepeda. I think he's too quick. I think he just has. He does everything better than Zepeda does. I just don't. I don't see where Zepeda beats him. Shakur, the only question with Shakur is, can he take a shot? Because Zepeda will hit him. I guess because Shakur should dominate in every other category, except can he take the punch? Lomachenko, if he ever fought him or anybody, I don't know if he'll ever come back. I don't really favor Zepeda to be any of the top 4 or 5.
No, I think the Stevenson fight will probably happen just because they want it to happen. It can probably make money, but after that it'll probably just be fun fights for Zepeda. I could see him going up to 140 pounds. I could see him just being in a bunch of very entertaining fights, much like Chon Zepeda was. God love these guys with the last name Zepeda. They're pure entertainment, but there is a ceiling. Des, let me ask you on this one. Do you think that Farmer actually looks physically stronger at 135 pounds than he did at 130? Because I seem to always recall thinking he looked a little bit frail at 130 pounds. But last night, I mean, he truly looked like a stout lightweight.
Yes and no. I think you've got to accept that a Tevin Farmer is one of them interesting characters in boxing that has become a sum of all his parts. And what's made him a world-class fighter was the ups, the downs, and primarily the downs he had very early on in his career. He's one of them guys that lost their debut. He got stopped on his debut. And then going into his sixth bout, he was 2-1. He was never fancied. He was this guy that was an unheralded amateur who couldn't punch, but he learned his tricks in the gym. So after the Pedraza fight, where I think Pedraza was 10-0 or 11-0 at the time, it was like, is this guy ever going to go away? But Farmer got the hang of it. He got his rhythm. He got a style. He understood, and he got all that from the gyms. He was the guy that you could bring in for sparring. He wasn't going to hurt your kid because he couldn't punch, and he learned to look after himself and survive. He learned to navigate through the gaps, and then he became a world-class fighter in his own right. I think it's hard to judge whether he looks bigger and stronger at 35 because he's sort of taken fights that he can't win at 35. I don't think he can ever beat Zepeda. And to pick up on Justin's point, this wasn't really about what Farmer's got left. We kind of know where Farmer's going now. We knew that a few fights ago. This fight was all about how fast can we move Zepeda? Now, Zepeda's had over 30 bouts. Justin said, is he that much of a puncher? Can we really bank on his power? We're all boxing people. Matty, you've been high on Zepeda. You probably couldn't tell me his best win outside of his last 3 fights. I mean, Zepeda's not known for knocking out world-class kids. I don't think he's got a standout knockout winner, is he? Or are you going to correct me?
Oh, I'll tell you what. I think he's got 2 wins on his resume that are worth noting because not only, they're decent fighters, but how he beat them. And one would be Maxie Hughes, who is a very capable fighter, and just running him over like that. It's not, that he beat Maxie Hughes. Okay, a lot of fighters could beat Maxie Hughes. How many fighters have just ran over him like a fucking semi-truck? And also Giovanni Cabrera, who we've seen go rounds with Pitbull Cruz and a number of other very, very capable fighters around 35 and 40. And he whipped his ass in 3 rounds.
Right. So that's my point, though, Matty. That Zepeda, after 33 bouts, 24 KOs, his best win is Maxie Hughes and Cabrera. Is it Javier Cabrera?
Giovanni Cabrera, yeah.
Giovanni Cabrera. That does not tell me this guy can go in with Keyshawn or Shakur or Tank or any of them other guys at 35. So he's been spoke about in that company, but I think he's off that company. Now, Keyshawn, I think, 12 or 13 fights in. It might be 15 fights. Around that number, though. He's half the fights, half the career Zepeda's had. I think he's twice a fighter, or he's shown me he's twice a fighter. And I wouldn't fancy Zepeda in that fight. I wouldn't fancy him with anyone at the top echelons at 35. So I'm kind of where William Zepeda is. I've always said this to you, mate, because we've had loads of conversations about him. There's something they don't fancy in Zepeda. The people behind him, that is. There's something that the people behind William Zepeda are not sure about. And
if he got touched like that by a puncher, he would be fucking flattened. If he was touched by someone by a real puncher, he would have been fucking flattened for sure.
Right. And there's something the people behind him don't quite fancy for them to put the brakes on. They've not taken the handbrake off this kid. But on the face of it, he looks perfect. Is he the WBC champion?
Who's that?
Zepeda.
I think like interim champion.
Right.
Yeah,
So
they gave him the interim after the first Farmer fight, I think.
No,
Right,
that
so
was a
he's
10-rounder. That was so that couldn't have been. Well, they make up the rules.
Oh,
I know that he's right. They gave it to him.
He's been in and around championship level, and he's had some variation of a belt on him. And they're talking about this kid like he's the one that can dominate at 35, and they're talking about Shakur Stevenson and maybe even Tank Davis. But we know about the talent in people like Schofield, Mason, Keyshawn, and who's the Cuban kid? I forgot his name.
Andy Cruz, who
Cruz
Thomas
is in there
Newman
as well.
said Farmer might be a good opponent for next up. I was thinking Abdullah Mason, but yeah, that's a good.
But they're really hot coming up in that weight as well. So picking up on what Justin said, I'm not quite sure where Zepeda goes. If I could just talk about the fight last night, though, the positives were, I think Zepeda fought with a bit more of an identity last night, and he took the fight to Farmer, and he was constant and he was consistent, and he made Farmer fight with or without an injury at an uncomfortable pace. And at least that gave me a little bit of, well, at least he's got some sort of identity. He's fighting like a puncher, if that's what he is. But I'm still not sure about Zepeda. And when I look at that group at 35, I just think, no, you're probably the last. I mean, I don't think he beats Lomachenko, Shakur, Tank, Keyshawn. I think it's a real hard division for William Zepeda.
I think get the Shakur fight. He's the interim, so that makes him obviously the mandatory at the end of the day. Let it happen, and then let him become an opponent with Top Rank looking like I think that's agreed to that they're going to be popping over to DAZN after their ESPN deal is done. That opens up so many of these potential fights. So then, after, Zepeda loses to Shakur Stevenson, which I believe is probably highly likely after last night and just kind of considering some stylistic things. But then you have the opportunity to potentially have Zepeda against Keyshawn Davis. Interesting fight. Zepeda against Abdullah Mason. Interesting fight. Zepeda against Raymond Murataya, who's going in against Zura Abdullayev for a 135-pound belt. Also, interesting fight. So I'm looking forward to the Top Rank move, and I don't know that Zepeda is the top of the heap at 135 pounds, but I think he's a guy who brings enough entertainment value, and his style brings enough of a bit of an intriguing possibility in the late rounds, and you're kind of still edge of your seat, that he's a guy who will get plenty of chances. But
what was positive about last night? Someone behind Zepeda would have said to him, "This guy's fiddled you about for 12 rounds. He fancies the job. Go out there and show him who's boss." And Zepeda did fight with intent. So that's a positive.
Yeah, and I thought, there was a few rounds where Farmer just, landed some great shots and he found the right movement, the right rhythm and worked around. But there were other rounds where Zepeda would catch up to Farmer. He would invest heavily to the body, keep him against the ropes, land clean shots. And it was, two guys trying to, make the fight work on their stylistic terms. And I just thought that, that Zepeda, got the better of that, probably 2/3 of the fight.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, perhaps, I've just spoke about Tevin Farmer, but, us boxing fans, we love someone that's come up the hard way. And Tevin Farmer's never been fancied. He's the guy that come through a very good area of boxing, having to learn in the gyms, having to look after himself, having to know how to look after himself without knowing how to fire back. He ain't a dynamite kid, and he's learned his trade in the gyms. And along the way, he's had losses, and he's had a bit of heartbreak, but he's stuck with it. So I think there's an awful lot of respect from boxing fans to Tevin Farmer. Thomas Newman knows his boxing. I wouldn't like to see him against Andy Cruz. I think Andy Cruz would light him up, and I hope Tevin don't go that route. I think he's had a really respectable career, Tevin Farmer, and I'd like him to call it a day now. But I wouldn't like to see him fed to the Andy Cruzes, like Thomas said, or the Abdullah Masons, because I just think I think his career deserves a bit more. I don't want him to go on having lost his last 10 fights or 12 fights and won't be one of them kids.
Well, the Mason though, it would be a good fight for Abdullah Mason though. Learning fight. I mean, you don't want
a good
Farmer
fight for Cruz. No, correct.
Yeah, Mason though, I think would be the perfect kind of get ready fight for him, Farmer. So I mean, I could see him maybe making that because Farmer, I don't think Farmer's going to quit because he made a whole rant last night that boxing screwed him. He's never going to get the calls. Hey, I mean that happens to everybody. You can name 1,000 fighters over the last 100 years that have that rap and they don't get the calls. I still don't think he got robbed, but yeah, there's fights. I mean, they're not going to put him in. He don't deserve a title shot. He don't deserve any. But like Abdullah Mason, that Javier Herrera, that other Cuban guy, there's guys out there, prospect, that they're going to call Farmer to put him in there versus. So he's going to have – his phone is going to ring. He's probably going to get a lot of offers because the way he fought Zepeda, they're going to get offers. There's a bunch of guys they would try to throw him in versus. So it just depends on if he wants to keep going because there's going to be money for him to make. I just don't know how much will he has left to go get it. But he still offers something in boxing. He still offers that high level gatekeeper type guy. So it just depends on if he wants to take the shots and keep going.
For everything boxing might have done wrong to Tevin Farmer, him trying to make that Mickey Bay fight happen for 2 years, that was his own mistake, and he lost 2 years of what could have been still a very decent career. Trying to make a stupid fight happen. So sometimes other people do it to us, and sometimes we do it to ourselves, unfortunately. So that we'll see where each guy goes from here. I'm looking forward to seeing those careers obviously continue. And unfortunately, I was watching a lot of the top rank card last night, so I missed a fair bit of the card that was from Mexico, including my man Oscar Collazo, the Puerto Rican minimum weight badass, getting another stoppage victory over Edwin Cano Hernandez. Apparently he looked super sharp in this fight from all accounts that I've seen here and there. Justin, what do you have to say about this 105-pounder who is still trying to grab the public's attention?
Oh, he busted Cano up. He went upstairs, downstairs. The body shots were awesome. And that's what eventually stopped Cano. And Cano was hurt. I mean, he was laying there propped his head on the rope. They were trying to turn him over. I mean, that body shot, he laid there for a few minutes.
A right hand to the body isn't a liver shot. That's like breaking ribs or something like that.
Yeah, he did. Something got broke because Cano was hurting. I don't know what something didn't go well, but yeah, Collazo I think me and you talked about it last week. We talked about it. He just kind of has everything. He knows how to box. He's got the power. He has that, I guess, machismo, whatever you want to call the Latin part of it. He gets it. And so I don't know how long he'll be at 105. It's not like this. It's a big division. He'll need to move up to try to get bigger names. But Cano was just a tough guy. They really didn't offer a ton. And Collazo was just able to split him open. I haven't really looked at the rankings, but Collazo, I mean, you got to figure being that low of a weight class, he's not going to hang there long. And he's not young. I think Collazo is 27 or 28, so he's not going to – I think they're going to move him quickly up. I don't think he's going to hang around a weight class for too long a period of time before they start getting him because, like you said, he's got the Puerto Rican behind him. He's got it. And I'm saying maybe another title defense, then move him up, challenge another guy at the next weight class because he gets it. He definitely gets it.
Yeah, he still needs to find a good dance partner. I mean, I guess he could go try to grab another belt, but when he beat knockout CP Freshmart, that was about as big a statement at 105. I think that's kind of available on the rankings.
He's had like 6 title defenses or something. I don't know what he's looking for. Like you said, maybe there's not better he can really dance with there, but I think he's defended the belt like 5 or 6 times. So now either try to get him a unification or they might need to just move him up.
Yeah, and I mean it's a shame that unfortunately I think it's tough making the fights for him, because when you get up from there, you're talking about a lot of the Japanese fighters there. But I mean, God, if you want a way to make a big claim for a Hall of Fame resume at those lower weights, beat some of these Japanese fighters that me and others have been high on for a handful of years. I mean, those are huge statements, and we'll obviously get into talking about a little bit of that later. But Collazo, I mean, it's just not going to probably happen on the terms that Eddie or DAZN would want it, because unfortunately it kind of wanders into that Japanese territory. But that said, Top Rank has kind of partnered with them on a lot of those fights, and that's kind of why they're on ESPN. So maybe these Japanese fighters are moving over to DAZN too. And if that happens, well, I'm just freaking tickled pink. I don't even know how to put that into words for all these fights to open up. But Des, I don't know if you caught the little dude, but apparently continuing to impress, just whooping the guy up 5 rounds, over and done with. It's rare to see a talent like this. It's almost just a shame that he is in the lower weight classes, because there's just not enough deep enough talent pool, really. Whereas compared if he was a featherweight or something like that, where we could see him, going against real quality operators and testing what those skills are really at.
Just to be clear, Matty, there'll never be a time Oscar Collazo is boxing and I'm not watching it. He's one of my favourite fighters in the sport. I think he's got everything. I think he's a punch picker. He's a sharpshooter. He's a body puncher. He's a headhunter. He's got the lot. He can fight on the front foot and the back foot. He can hit you with both hands and get to you. He's got arrogance. He's got a bit of swagger. He's got a bit of devil in him. This guy, I'm convinced, he comes from New Jersey, and he's of Puerto Rican descent. I'm convinced they're going to just get him down to New York and they're going to sell this kid. And I think he'll pack out the Barclays or Madison Square Garden. This guy is an absolute superstar waiting to happen. And I think he can go from 105 easily to 115, possibly 118. And depending how he does at 118, you might even see him at 122. I think this guy can go as far as Super Bantam. He's that good. He's that talented. He's not just a puncher. He's a good boxer. But what we're seeing down at 105 is, after 2 or 3 rounds, he knows he's got this other kid. And I've seen it so often now. He just walks him down. And he's got this brilliant habit. He puts him into a closed space and he invites him to fight in the pocket. And then he starts throwing punches off his back foot. So he's a southpaw. But he steps back with his trailing leg and falls over his left knee, allows the other kid to throw, and then comes back with his arching hooks. And he don't mind throwing 3s and 4s. And he knocks people bandy. Like, he literally knocks people sideways. This guy has got everything. This kid can really fight. They've got one here. 12-0, 9 stoppages. He's got power we don't see down now. Now, in my adult life, I've seen the brilliant Chocolatito, huge respect. And I think Rodriguez is going to be another game changer down there. And Inoue's already been a game changer. I think this guy's going to go into that group. I think he's going to be someone that changes the face of that much lighter weight boxing. At the moment, it's 105 pound. I think he's going to do a Pacquiao. He's going to have one fight at light flyer, win a title, then he'll go to flyweight. And then you just see him progress, and he'll be chasing big fights because that's where the money will be. And I think by then he'll have a brilliant crowd in New York, and the Puerto Ricans will come out for him. I think he's a huge talent. I'm so impressed with him last night. Just watch this space. I mean, last night was some brilliant prospects or some guys just behind world level showing some brilliant talents, and he was one of them. Very good fighter, Collazo.
Yeah, he punished him though. That's what you like to see. Though he didn't just outbox him; he punished his guy.
Oh shit! We just missed a big knockout here, fucking in that Constantine Ersu fight. I gotta rewind this.
You must be ahead of me.
Shit,
Justin.
Yeah.
If you go back and watch that Collazo fight, I'll send it to you. He so enjoys putting hands on people.
He does.
He actually invites them in, and he steps back. He steps back and throws these beautiful hooks. He doesn't need to go on the front foot. He invites them in, and when they throw, he rolls back, and he throws these whipping, arcing punch. They're not a check hook, but they are really ruthless.
I agree with you on that, though.
On people. Yeah.
There's no real names at above minimum at light fly. He'll have to like win a quick belt and move up to start getting the names, because there's not any household names at the weight classes he's at now. Nobody's ever heard of these guys. I mean, except for us. But yeah, Matt's right. Ersu just killed.
He obliterated that dude. Oh, I mean, they're bringing medical crews in there.
Yeah, he did.
He hit him with a clean left. He stepped over to his own left, came across with the left hand, and floored his opponent.
Ethan James is a decent fighter, and he just got completely wiped out.
And his head bounced off the canvas, nasty too. It's one of those where he hit him once, but it hit him twice.
Oh, Ersu's got the back pimples though. You look at his back. Bad.
No, I can't see that yet. I'll take a look. Yeah,
he's got the Huey Fury.
He is legitimately young, though. Like, when you're like 22, 23, a lot at that age, you can get back acne.
Look, Fury was just a nasty skin disease, wasn't it? I don't know what that was.
I just think he's an unfortunate-looking fellow in general.
Yeah. Well, James is up now, though, but he got...
That's good. Yeah, anyone gets a chance to see that one. Constantine Ersu versus Ethan James just concluded, and that is definitely a candidate for knockout of the year. That was ugly. That was ugly. Good thing to see him up, though. Good God.
Definitely UK knockout of the year, because that was a tough one. But it was he set it up, though. It was a perfect shot. Boom. Right, was it the old school, right on the chin.
You keep your eye on this, because that was for over 12 rounds, so I'd have to think that was for the Commonwealth strap, wasn't it?
It was for the Commonwealth.
Which weight class is that?
I think this is 147, 154.
I should freaking look further, but anyway, yeah, that's a prospect. That's a prospect to keep your eye on. Definitely is Constantine Ersu. That was legit shit, and he gets sloppy in there. His chin's up. He's gonna get hit by somebody someday and find himself on his ass. But man, he's a skillful son of a bitch.
You know what? That's what makes boxing good. You can't all be the slick guys. You have to have the guys that you're like, well, we know he's going to get knocked out cold one day, but you just enjoy the ride until the day he gets knocked out cold.
Yeah.
They're all like Zepeda. They're all going to be good fights. Like, you're going to see a good fight. It's going to come, and then you'll watch his next one. Like, same thing with Zepeda. All these guys, you know what's coming. We've all read the book before, and you're just waiting for it to happen, but you enjoy the ride.
I'll tell you what, though, I wouldn't be looking to put my guy in with Ersu at any point in time here soon. That guy he's going to have a hard time finding opponents, having a Commonwealth belt or not, because why? He's in kind of like a who needs him kind of club. What are you going to gain? He's going to have to get like a cult following going. So anyhow, let's see here. I'm not going in exact chronological order on this one here, but also on that card because I caught this one. Obviously, because I am a fan, saw her fight in Arizona. Yacosta Valle moving up a few divisions, taking on Marlon Esparza and winning a split decision. I thought she probably did enough that I couldn't necessarily see why one of the judges had one for Esparza. Again, maybe draw possibility in that one, or having an even card, excuse me. But Valle looked very, very sharp. She's just a better puncher. She has a better arsenal of shots. She clearly was a smaller woman there. It's interesting how people can weigh 3 pounds apart and have such dissimilar builds. But anyway, Yacosta Valle put on a nice performance of herself in a night where a woman's fight kind of, I don't know if it stole the show, because Zepeda versus Farmer was good, but it was definitely part of the quality that was shown last night. Did either of you guys catch this fight? If so, opinions? I know this is more my realm of things.
No, I left this one to you, Matty.
God love you. So, yeah, I enjoyed it, and I'll be interested. I still think the fight I want to see is Valle against Jessica Neri Plata. I think that's one of the best fights that could be made in women's boxing. We'll see if that goes down, though. I don't know. I think that's a gal who keeps globe trotting and picking up upset victories. So I don't know if they want anything to do with Neri. So anyhow, let's see here. Did not catch this Joselito Velasquez, Adolfo Castillo fight. Justin, your thoughts on this UD win for Velasquez?
Yeah, I watched. I got it. I think it was Velasquez got a pretty bad cut, if I remember right. Last night kind of got a blur a little bit. But yeah, he got cut, and it was just, I mean, it was a decent fight. I mean, I don't think people have to go back and exactly watch it. It was just two tough guys. Velasquez, I think they're trying to push him. Golden Boy R, he's like 20-1 now, 21 or 21-1, and the announcers were kind of talking about him maybe getting bigger fights now, but he's going to be on the shelf for a while because I think, I remember now, he got a bad cut on his face. Then he got a bad cut over like both eyes because the other guy got points off for headbutts. So it was just a nasty fight, sort of like the Yabuki fight. This one was just headbutts, people cut everywhere. So he'll be on the shelf for a while because I think he's got at least 3 that have to heal. But I don't really know where he goes from here. Like I said, Golden Boy, they're giving him a push. I think he's still a little too limited to beat any of the top guys, but hey, he's another one of those guys that's going to be fun to watch.
Excellent. Yeah, and I was kind of looking just a bit through his record there, and I caught a handful of rounds, I guess, actually, in that fight. He's just in like an area where it's so stacked, that 112, 115 area. I don't see where a guy like that picks up a title other than something becoming vacant and getting under the right conditions. There's just too much talent stacked down there. A lot of people would give him a whooping, in my opinion. Let's see here. Also on that, Robin Safar, you might remember him. I believe basically ending the career of Sergey Kovalev. He picked up a 5th-round stoppage over Roberto Silva. Decent enough fighter. Des, I don't know if you caught this one or not, but he might play in the heavyweight division. It's tough to tell, though, when the opponents we've seen him with are over-the-hill Kovalev and this kind of game, but overmatched and underskilled, somewhat fat guy that he faced last night.
I never see it, Matty. I was a Collazo and Zepeda.
You're fine. I'll just swing that over to Justin then.
That was in the one corner of my TV I was telling you about earlier. I don't think Safar is going anywhere. He was fighting an electrician that had a gut, and he took forever. And the announcers, you could tell the announcers were like, the whole point of that fight was they were expecting him to look good on TV, and they were building him up. But even the announcers, by like the 5th round, were like, he needs to do something. This is like taking too long. They even kind of got frustrated because he was taking a little too long to beat that guy. But I don't know where he goes from here. He's just who knows. I think
the guy's kind of a tough son of a bitch. I saw the punch stats on it, and like Safar was landing 20+ punches around on him throughout the fight, each round. So it seems like he's at least a durable fat electrician.
Yeah, he'll have to call out tomorrow. There's no way he's going to work tomorrow because he took a lot of shots. But Safar, I think, like you said, he beat Kovalev, and that got him this contract. So I don't know where he goes from here, but beating a really old Kovalev got him this deal, but I wouldn't rush to push him versus anybody much better than the electrician right now.
I think Kovalev was like 41 or 42 when he beat him. And if you're a Russian that drinks heavily, that's like being 60, 65, that adds a generation to your ass at the end of the day. The jury's still out on Safar, but he'll probably get a chance here or there. We'll see. Could be in some entertaining fights. I just think he's got the style that could create some entertaining moments for sure. But anyhow, that was the card from Cancun, Mexico. It looked fucking beautiful. Hell of a place to be. Let's see here. Heading over to the stateside, and I hope, even though this was a women's fight, I hope you gentlemen took part in it because it was a hell of a good women's fight. Even though this time Michaela Mayer was able to get the cards of all of the judges, and rightfully so, in my opinion, winning 97-93 two times, 98-92 over Sandy Ryan in their rematch, this time in Las Vegas. She just seemed quicker. She landed good hard shots. I thought she hurt Ryan at times, and she just kind of seemed to control the bout. And they're just Ryan didn't punch with her as much as she did in the first fight, which allowed Mayer to kind of get off and get out. So it was a very impressive victory for her. Looking at a Lauren Price fight possibly coming up after that is in a big unification. That might be undisputed, I believe, actually. So exciting times in the career of Michaela Mayer, who has really looked fantastic at 147 pounds, Des. And I thought that she deserved the Jonas victory.
Yeah, Michaela Mayer is one of them fighters that, for different reasons and probably different ends of the spectrum, is a bit like Tevin Farmer. That she's a sum of all her parts now. And the Baumgardner result and the Jonas result, I think, have probably really helped her in rebuilding, helped her in being a lot more assertive, helped her in her style. I mean, last night, she always looked one step ahead of Sandy. I mean, and it was clear that you said that Sandy didn't let her hands go. And going into round 7, I think Mayer had thrown about 120 punches more than Sandy. And it told. It looked like it. Mayer was busy. She was one step ahead. She could do a bit of everything. She knew how to box. She knew how to fight in close. She knew how to land the right shots that would probably convince judges she'd just nick that close round. I think Sandy had worked out with her team, look, I can't get caught into a phone box fight with Michaela Mayer because that's probably what she wants. So I'm going to try and make her miss. And Sandy's feet were really good. She was bouncing, trying to feint, trying to draw punches out of Michaela and then touch her over the top. But what Mayer had started to do after round 3 was counter the counter puncher. So that was happening. Mayer was assertive. Sandy was being proactive and scoring. But Mayer would then step in and counter that. And it was having an effect. And going into round 6, I just thought now Sandy Ryan was starting to reach. And she was grabbing a bit. And maybe, I don't know if this is probably a stretch too far, but it might have been one of the most complete performances I've seen from a women boxer in terms of Mayer had the punch, she knew how to box, she knew how to raise the tempo, she knew how to move Sandy around.
Great ring generalship. That's what it was.
She seemed to show that last night. And, you know, look, I love them frantic Serrano, Katie Taylor fights. And I've enjoyed Natasha Jonas in her career. But I think that might have been the most complete female performance I've seen in terms of she looks like she can do a bit of everything really well. Sandy Ryan, no complaints from her. I mean, she went out there with a plan. She tried to execute it. But Michaela Mayer countered the counter puncher. And I just think that she was one step ahead the last night of Sandy. She's a good fighter, Michaela Mayer. And again, there was nothing between her and Jonas and nothing between her and Baumgardner. I'm not saying she deserved to win them, but you could argue she was really close to winning them. So her career has been a real good one, and she's a really good female fighter.
Yeah, again, I mean, she is one of those fighters that's inarguably would be a women's top 10 pound for pound, probably arguably in the top 5. And it's rare when you have a men's title fight on a card like this for the women to headline. But Justin, they did, deservedly so. And the crowd really seemed to get into this one. It was definitely a fight that entertained on a legitimate level.
And if I could just say, Justin, sorry, if I could just say, Matthew, sorry, Justin.
No, I didn't watch the fight, so I got nothing to say anyway.
But I think
they've marketed
yes, I'm good.
Michaela Mayer really well. You know, she's done loads of it. She's been a really good co-commentator. She's been sort of poster girl for Top Rank. She's done the Olympics. She's travelled. She's been to the UK. She's taken big fights. I mean, what she's getting out of boxing is pretty much what she's put into it. She's put an awful lot into it. And there was a time in her career that I thought she was a little bit flat. and maybe she'd reached her ceiling, but she's not got rid of people, but she might have added to the team, and it's stepped her up a little bit. And she's been around a few weights, she's been around the world, she's won a few titles, and she's lost them and she's won them back. And she's one of them that's a sum of all her parts, and she's a very good fighter now, Michaela Mayer.
You know what I think it might have been, Des, and think this, like, and I don't know a whole lot about Michaela's life and this, and I know when you're a woman in sport, I mean, there's obviously difficulties in that in itself. But as far as being a pro went, she was with Top Rank, who had always been hesitant to take on female fighters, and had gotten, some opportunities that other women might not have gotten. And then she got the raw end of certain decisions and stuff. But nonetheless, I think it was Kay Kuroma deciding to ditch her for Sandy Ryan that gave her that little extra bit. Like, she needed someone to basically say that they didn't believe in her, and for her to be like, okay, then fuck you. And the fight with Sandy Ryan and the whole sequence of events was just the perfect storm to really bring out what is the best of Michaela Mayer, Des. Sometimes it's all the way somebody responds, right?
I agree. But I agree. But I saw a good version of Michaela Mayer against Natasha Jonas over here, where she was very assertive and very proactive. And perhaps she was hot. I thought Jonas won that one, only just. But that was a close fight. And I just think Michaela Mayer, through what you just explained there and through other reasons, I think Michaela Mayer has thought, I can't leave anything to chance. I've got to be the best version of me in here tonight. I mean, all boxers say that, but she really proved it. And last night, she just seemed to be good at everything. I'm not saying, she was the biggest puncher and she was like an Arturo Gatti inside the pocket, and she was a Floyd Mayweather on the back foot, but she was good at all those facets. And she looks a complete fighter now. And that's what made me think it might have been one of the most complete performances I've seen from a woman in the last 10 years, because since women's boxing's sort of, been televised and started headlining bills, I think she now might have put in the most complete performance. She looks like a really good fighter, and it looks like they're going to get the Lauren Price one. I always thought Natasha Jonas would have a lot of boxing, a ring IQ, ring generalship, and a lot of boxing ability to maybe switch Lauren Price off. And after 4 or 5 rounds, it'd be interesting to see what Lauren Price has got. I think Michaela Mayer can do that job. And if she can't, Price will force the fight and make her fight. So that's a real good one. And I'm looking forward to it. That's a female fight I really look forward to, Michaela Mayer and Lauren Price.
Yeah, and that's a fight where, if you look at Mayer's career, her only losses are by split decision, and plenty of people argue that she won those fights, myself among them. If Price could find a way, and it would be big, to be able to claim undisputed champion at 147 pounds, and if she could do it conclusively, where Michaela Mayer has no argument that she won the fight, that would be a hell of a way to attain her throne, and it would be a meaningful unification fight for undisputed too. And I like seeing that when these things fall into place, and the fights they make sense and they're actually meaningful. So really looking forward to that one. But it's also on that card, not nearly as competitive, was Brian Norman Jr. defending his title and just beating the crap out of Derek Cuevas over 3 rounds. Cuevas, he just didn't have it anymore. He went down hard, got up. Referee looked at him like, nah, I think we're done here. I'm trusting that you probably saw this one, Justin. It's tough to judge Norman off of this fight. He kind of came out of nowhere with that dominant victory over Santion, who was highly rated at one time. And I don't know, if you look at Cuevas' CV, I have not much to say about this. And it's a shame that this is a fight that was basically like 6 or 8 months in the making.
Well, it sounds like the women's fight definitely should have been the main event, because Cuevas just quit. The referee was trying to talk to him. He just kept walking away from him, and he just quit. There's nothing else to say about that. Norman, like you said, I don't know what you really don't gain anything out of this, because he took all that time off, and then Cuevas just didn't want it. It's as simple as that. And I hate sitting there saying, because I'm not in the ring taking punches, but that was a bad quit. He just didn't. I mean, flat out, he was about to walk out of the ring. I thought he just gave up. And yeah, but Norman's got some ability. He's got 20. I was like 20-1 with like 19 knockouts now or something like that. So yeah, but they got to get him somebody better than Cuevas. That was kind of embarrassing.
Well, they were trying to make the Boots unification fight, and they offered him 1.5 mil, and he I don't want that. Walked away from that.
That's so stupid because when's he gonna make that kind of money? I mean,
yeah, he was probably thinking if you got a couple more victories under his belt, he might be able to make more. But that's a lot of cash to kind of step away from, especially if you believe that you can win that. Because if you're able to win a unification fight against Boots, and you cash 1.5 million there, I guarantee you your next check is going to be more than 2.
You got it. What's the old saying? You got to bet on yourself sometimes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, and fighters have done that over the years. Sometimes you just got to say, you know what? I'm going to take the low money because I know I'll make the big money.
Kind of like Vince Vaughn in dodgeball, right?
Yeah, it's coming. Yeah. But I think honestly, I mean, I still think Ennis might have a little too much for him, but that would be a really good fight. I think that because Norman brings something to the table Ennis hadn't seen. I mean, I think that would be a good fight. He should have took the money. I don't think Cuevas quitting last night and him sitting out as long as he has, they're not going to offer him 1.5 this time. I mean, they might offer him less. I mean, I don't think it's there for him.
It's tough to tell, and I'll tell you what. I think that people who are writing off Stanionis in this fight are out of their minds, and I think the books.
They are, definitely.
The books having Stanionis paying more than 4-1. Like, I don't want to take this conversation too off course here, Des, but I mean, we are talking about the welterweight division in general here. But I think there's a shit ton of value to be found on Stanionis, especially if people are thinking Boots is having a trouble making 147 pounds technically. Stanionis and that pistol of a fucking jab can absolutely control a fight. And considering the troubles that Karen gave him, I don't know, Des. I'm pretty high on Stanionis at more than 4-1.
Yeah, that's a good value. That's good value. It's a good price. But I think let's just assume it plays out how it's meant to play out, and it's meant to play out. Boots wins. We know what Stanionis
is. If it goes to the cards and it's close, don't kid yourself. Boots will win because it's what they want.
And I still think if the best version of Boots turns up, he wins. So this is where I think doors open for fighters. And I think Brian Norman, who's really heavy-handed, can punch with both hands. Last night, Cuevas never been down, never been stopped. He was absolutely shell-shocked. And Norman just seemed to be in first gear. Now, this might be the perfect time to come through at 147, because if Boots was to beat Stanionis, and let's be clear now, all the cream has gone to 54. If Boots goes to 54, because of the guys that we see operating up there, and it could be either, let's take Bud out of it, because he's probably got other plans now moving up, but you've still got Murtazaliev, and you've still got Buranchek, and you've still got Tszyu coming back, and you've still got, is Fendora up at 54 as well?
Yep.
Yeah, so you've got big fights to be made up there. Majimov coming off of a loss, still a big fight. So I think maybe Boots might think, well, look, I've done the 147 thing. It's cleared out a bit. I'm now going to step up. And I think doors will be open for Brian Norman. And if that is the case, I think Brian Norman could be a really good addition to welterweight. What I saw last night, Justin's right. Cuevas did chuck it. But I think he was so badly buzzed. I didn't quite know I'm not sure if he knew where he was, because he was taking a lot of punches and he was getting bounced around. And Norman looks really heavy-handed, and he was catching him with check hooks. And Cuevas was asked, turn and face me. And he didn't know what way to go. I said, I'm going to have to give him the benefit of that and say, he'd had several rounds with Brian Norman and discovered he's out of his depth. But saying that, Brian Norman's now 27-0 with 21 KOs. Cuevas is 27-2-1 with 19 KOs. it was a fight that's going to show us a little bit about Brian Norman, and I think it showed us quite a lot. So I'd be interested to see after the Boots Stanionis fight how the landscape changes a little bit and where Brian Norman goes. But he is talking world titles, and he does want to fight the best in the division. So I think Brian Norman's an interesting one, and I think it could be the right place at the right time. He's definitely a good fighter.
Yeah, it's just, as you said, if Boots decides to go up to 54, I mean, it is wide open. But let me make the argument at this point in time, Justin, that welterweight is about as bad as it's been in my lifetime, maybe, especially if you take Ennis and Stanionis out of it at 1 and 2. This is the ESPN ratings. Third, they got Brian Norman. Fourth, Mario Barrios, Connor Ben, Shakram Giasov, Jin Sasaki, Abel Ramos, Giovanni Santillon, and Alexis Rocha, who had that majority draw with Raul Curiel, which was a fantastic fight, by the way. But that, if you think about welterweight in this historic division, what a fucking flat list that is.
It's thin. It's thin. You're right. If Boots is gone, and like I said, you take Stanionis, like you said, I think Dej just said it. Norman will walk that division. I think Norman beats all those guys. I think he's the top dog if Boots goes up, because it's weak. I mean, there's a decent fighters in there, but I mean, if you've got Connor Ben in the top 10, we go ahead and talk about that all day. That just shows how weak it actually is. But I think, like you said, Stanionis paying out. Everybody on here listening and all of us, would any of us be surprised if Stanionis won? I don't think anybody would be shocked or surprised if he won. I think Boots will win, but Stanionis has enough about him that we would be like, okay, that wasn't as big a difference as everybody thought it was. Because I was listening to another podcast, I think a couple weeks ago. I've never listened to them before. It's just two British guys talking. And they were kind of writing off Stanionis. Like, hey, we don't want to – this is like basically writing it off as the fact that they were like, well, everybody keeps saying this is Stanionis' biggest fight. They said it's not really that big of a fight for Boots. They said this is just another guy, and I don't believe that. That's definitely not the case. This is not another guy. Stanionis could, when you've got a world-class hunt, a jab, and you're tough, you're not another guy. He can do some things. So that fight will be very interesting. I think if Boots is the guy we think he is, he should win. But Stanionis would not surprise me. I'm definitely going to put a bet on Stanionis at 4-1. I'm definitely going to put something on that because I would not be surprised if he won.
No, I would make the argument, Des, that Stanionis, as far as that list goes, is the most technically sound boxer at welterweight in the top 10. And that's why I think he's obviously has a good chance against Boots.
Yes, he is technically sound, and it's a good assessment, Matty. Look, I think Boots wins. I think Boots is due a good one, and I think this might.
He needs one. He needs
one
just to keep the public opinion of him up.
Yeah, and I think he's due one. And I think he's had the homecoming done now, and he's had a world title around his waist for a while now, and I think he's due one. And I think sometimes when you have a technically sound fight, this can go the other way, by the way. I'm no expert on this. This is not an authority. It's not written in stone. But sometimes when you have a very correct, technically efficient fighter, sometimes a fight with a lot more flair, a lot more loose, a lot more fluid can sometimes really find angles and gaps around his style. So I think the first 3 rounds will tell us an awful lot in the Boots Stanionis fight. I know that sounds like a cop-out, but it's a sort of thing that I would take on in-play bet because I just think that it depends what type of Boots turns up. And Boots, he's due a good one. And if the right Boots turns up, I think he beats Stanionis. I think he beats him well. But I can see the jeopardy involved here. You're quite right.
See, and you're kind of maybe just throwing it to the breeze, and that's why I think I'd be hesitant about putting too big of a bet on it. But I think, kind of playing off what you're saying there, I think the way I probably will do it is put a bet on Stanionis to win at these odds, somehow next day or two or whatever, and then look at it in fight. And if he's looking super sharp in the first 3 rounds, those odds are going to, potentially shift on a dime depending on how so. But Ennis definitely has the power advantage, and I think you'll find yourself in an interesting position potentially if Stanionis is outboxing him soundly. Maybe not after the 3rd, but probably, 4th, 5th round, you might find yourself with an opportunity to toss a few on boots by knockout and kind of give yourself a little hedge on there, because Stanionis is looking sharp. Those numbers are going to shift very quickly, I think.
We haven't seen it. We haven't really seen how Boots wears this belt yet. Sometimes fighters can wear a belt, and it's almost like the expectation and the weight of being a world champion can sometimes stifle their development and their ability. At this level, that shouldn't happen, but it does happen sometimes. And sometimes fighters can think, you know what, this is the 147 champion and the number 1 in this division is quite weighty. That's why sometimes, that's why we want to. That's why I say Boots is due a good one. You've had the homecoming, you've had the belt around you a while, you've worn it, and now you've got to show us how good you are. And it's almost like us in boxing are waiting for Boots to almost say, yeah, you're the king at 47. It's been a premier division for the last 100 years, and anyone that's walked in your shoes has always been one of the best fighters in the sport. Now that it's your turn. And I think maybe that might be a bit weighty for Boots, but he's definitely due a good one. And if the right Boots turns up, I expect him to beat Stanionis. But yeah, for me, it's a fight that I look at in play. And if Boots doesn't get going, I wonder going into round 3, 4, and 5, whether his head drops, he starts to feel sorry for himself, and he tries that old trick of, I'm just going to do enough not to get beat. And then that could be a problem for Boots, because Stanionis is too good for that.
Yeah, he's not going to just sit back and let you do nothing. He's a lot of fighters with the jab aren't necessarily what you would call proactive offensive fighters, but Stanionis is a tremendously proactive fighter. Offensive.
And I felt against Karen, Boots got into a rhythm where he thought, I'm just going to do enough not to lose the round, and I'll do that one after the other, and he got a decision. And I think if he does that against Stanionis, that could catch him out. So we need the right Boots to turn up, to come out the blocks, and to go straight into an 8.5 to 9 out of 10 and build on that and look good. But he's due a good one, Boots. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And honestly, this month of boxing that's kicking off is pretty fantastic. But anyhow, back to that top rank card. In a fight where it was a little surprising because, Enrique Vivas is typically a very durable fighter. He's been in there with some quality operators. Bruce Carrington went in there and it just smoked him in 3 rounds. He hit him heavy, dropped him, I believe, 1 point, and it just seemed like Vivas couldn't hold a shot through it. And I think the referee did a very good job stopping the fight because he didn't seem to be reacting to shots very well. He didn't seem to be quite as coherent as I would like a fighter to be in there. But this, honestly, to me, Justin, was probably the most impressive victory of Carrington's career at this point in time, and definitely a fight that I would say makes the argument he is worthy of a title shot.
Definitely. That counter right hand was eating Vivas up all night. He couldn't get away from it. Carrington looked really good. I like the stoppage. I think they probably could have stopped it the round before if they wanted to, because I think there was a point in the round before where Carrington landed like 7 or 8 in a row, and Vivas just couldn't do anything about it. So they maybe didn't need to let him go out there again, but I'm not really going to argue over that. But Carrington looked good. Now, I mean, Vivas was kind of a limited guy. I hate to throw some negative and throw some water on it, but Vivas was the perfect opponent for Carrington last night, the way he fought, because Carrington had a great style. He was just on the back foot, but the counter rights were awesome. He was just doing everything well. But you're right. He has to. I think title shot is next because there's not a lot. It's not like Carrington's got a lot left to learn and that he's got to get some more gatekeeper type. I mean, you got to throw him in and just see.
At this point in time, he has all the different tools and skills.
Yeah, you got to try him now.
Yeah, it's all about experience at this point in time.
Yeah, you got to throw him in there and just say, hey, sink or swim, because you can't just keep the Vivas's of the world are not going to. He didn't. Last night he might have learned a little bit, maybe a shot he was working on, but at this point, that's basically what he's doing. Is maybe they're just trying something in the gym. Hey, let's try to turn this hand. I mean, there's not a lot he can learn now. They just need to get him in there and just let it ride.
I think he needed this fight. This fight did do something for him in a sense, and it would be more for confidence than anything else, because he had a fight a couple ago with Sagawa where it honestly could have gone either way on the cards. That was a very, very close fight. And then he had a fight after that. I think it was against Coolwell, where he hit him, hurt him, dropped him, and he just could not finish it. Like, I think he needed the confidence to know that he has the skill, ability, and pop just to end the fight again.
Well, I mean, and also he looks good. Like that. This is this is what you need to sell him now, because people are going to remember this fight. So, like you said, this is good for your career because now you can sell him now. It was hard to sell him off the last two fights, but now you can really push him off of that one.
Absolutely. And does he really seem adamant, despite the fact he's top 5 with all the sanctioning bodies? He wants Nick Ball next. How do you see that fight going?
Well, last week we was talking about the featherweight division being particularly difficult for Nick Ball. And they're talking about Inoue, who's down at Super Bantam, and sort of looking past the brilliant fighters we've got at 126. Well, the division just got a little bit harder for Nick Ball and everybody else, because this kid is the real deal. I've seen enough in Bruce Carrington to know now that this guy can hang amongst the Fultons, the Nearys, the Figueroas, Espinosas, Angelo Leo, Nick Ball, Robsy, all of them. And Bruce Carrington looked absolutely punch perfect yesterday. It was, look, we know the limitations of Enrique Vivas. We know that. But it's how Carrington did it. He sat behind that shoulder on the back foot. He allowed the fight to be fought in a phone box. He was prepared to sit in the pocket, and he knew exactly where to be all the time. He knew what punches to throw. He was bringing them up. He was bringing them around. He was popping short, straight right hands. I thought he was punch perfect last night. And not only was he a good performance, he spoke really well. He smiled really well. He's a good talker. He comes from Brooklyn, New York. I think we've got one here. I think this kid can really make an impact at featherweight. And sometimes it ain't about who's the better fighter necessarily. But sometimes you get a guy come along.
Hey, back up about 10 seconds.
Brilliant style.
Back up about 10 seconds there, Des. I lost you for a moment there. I don't know if it was just me or if it was everybody.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Oh. Go again. There we go. I think I got you. I got you.
Can you hear me, mate?
Yep, I got you now.
You're back now.
I do apologise. So,
no worries.
We was talking about, the Nick Balls and the Espinosas, the Leos, the Nearys, the Figueroas, the Fultons, all them guys at featherweight. They all offer different brilliant challenges. But sometimes it's a style that can negate a great fighter. Floyd Mayweather fought loads of great fighters, but he had a style to negate them. Tyson Fury's fought some really good fighters, but his style negated them. Alexander Usyk's the same. Andre Ward was the same. And I just think Bruce Carrington has got a style. And if he can really perfect it, and if he can believe in it, I think Bruce Carrington is going to be a real hard one to beat, purely because he seems so comfortable on the back foot, holding his feet, operating in the pocket, and his punch selection last night. And again, I know it's Enrique Vivas. I understand that. But from what I saw, his style looked punch perfect. And I just think he's going to be a hard one to beat. He's definitely calling out Nick Ball. That was his first name out of his lips. But he talked about Stephen Fulton as well. I know why. He likes that opportunity. He's looked at what other people have done with them two guys and thought, I can do a better job. I can get around that particular style. I think he's a really good fighter, Bruce Carrington. I'm really interested to see over the next 12 months what they do with him and how far he can go. But on the basis of last night, a truly outstanding performance. He looked punch perfect.
Well, Philly versus New York, that's a fun little rivalry there too. That could be fun in itself for the fight. Yeah.
You know what? I think the reason he called out Ball is that's the most obvious. I think everybody saw that is Vivas kind of does what Ball does. Kind of just comes right at you.
And just from a higher level.
Yeah.
Like not skill level, but height.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like it's the same type style. And Carrington has, like, I think Des just summed it up perfectly. He has the exact style that would give Nick Ball, like it would just be horrible for Ball. Because Carrington's got pop. He's going to back up. He knows how to counter. I would definitely think he would beat Ball. I would definitely pick Carrington to beat Ball. I mean, Nick Ball's a good fighter, but I think, like Des said, style-wise, I think Ball is exactly the type guy that Carrington wants. That's
precisely my point. That's precisely my point, Justin.
Exactly, that's what you said. That's the perfect fighter for him.
I'm not saying that Nick Ball's a lesser fighter. You could argue that Nick Ball's got better strengths, but it's a stylistic matchup that I go for, and I just think Carrington might be the kryptonite for Nick Ball's style, and I just think that's where. I mean, look, there's no doubt about it. All them guys, Nick Ball is probably the number one kid at featherweight. He's the one they're all looking at. And they would have looked at the Vargas fight and the Raymond Ford fight and the Ronnie Rios fight and the Doheny fight and thought, I could be the one to cash this kid in. I could get him at the right time. And he does get hit easy, Nick Ball. Sometimes he is very predictable. He does things in straight lines. He pounces in. I just think guys like Carrington would think, when am I going to get the call? Because this is easy. I'm not saying it is, by the way. Nick Ball's a good fighter. But Carrington's got a style that could switch Nick Ball could completely switch him off.
He could frustrate Nick Ball, and I think that's the key to it. Like, Nick Ball usually doesn't get frustrated in there. He kind of handles it, but I think Carrington just brings that little bit of extra ability, and it might be, just the athleticism end of things that would probably cause Ball to kind of mentally frazzle a little bit, especially, going over 12 rounds. So I'd be intrigued to see that fight 100%. So we'll see if they get that done or not. It's, Nick Ball, he probably needs to take an actual mandatory because these voluntary defenses have been totally lacking as far as it goes. But anyhow, going down that card further, Tiger Johnson got a stoppage victory over Kendo Castaneda over 5 rounds. This probably, Justin, one of the better performances for Tiger Johnson, but I don't know. Am I missing something? I just don't think he's it.
I agree with you. It's hard to put in words sometimes, but everybody, we watch so much boxing, and sometimes you can't describe it, but you just know it, you feel it, that there's something lacking. It's hard, maybe you can't really pick out what it is, but you're right. He's good at this, he's good at that, but he's not great at anything. He's not. I'm like you. I can't pinpoint it, but I agree with it. There's something that and eventually when he does lose, we'll be like, oh, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I meant. That's what we were trying to pinpoint. But yeah, it's coming. He's definitely not in the Mason categories or all those guys' categories. Because he was one of those guys, Top Rank, you remember they all come out about the same time. They all kind of debuted around the same time, all these guys. There was just a whole handful of them.
Oh, yeah, they're all the Olympic team.
Yeah, they'll all come out, and he's going to be in some interesting fight. Castaneda we kind of know what he is. He's just he's a body. He's going to give you rounds. He's a tough guy. I kind of like at the point now where he's got enough fights under his belt, it's probably time. I probably wouldn't be a good promoter because I'd be stepping everybody up, whether they're ready or not, just to see what they have. But I'd imagine he should be stepped up a little bit. Castaneda he's decent, but it's time to do something. But you're right. I can't explain it. There's something a little not clicking.
Yeah, I don't know if you caught this fight or not, Des. So what do you think? Where are you at, if so, on the conversation of, what kind of a package is Tiger Johnson as a fighter?
I never see the fight last night, but I read the report. I think Justin summed it up, and there might be something just missing from that package. We'll have to see a bit more. I have to see a bit more from him. What I've seen so far, I don't think he punches hard enough. I don't think he's. No, there's a bit more to be done yet. And it's a competitive division. No, I'd have to see a bit more from him. Maybe with someone like Johnson, it's about timing, and they've got to get the timing right. But at the moment, he's a long way off it for me.
Yeah, we'll see if maybe he'll put it together. You know, at one point in time, I remember saying something entirely similar about Brian Norman Jr. And then he fought Giovanni Sanyon, and I felt like a dick. So the only other fight I think on there that's worth noting is probably Emiliano Vargas taking out Giovanni Gonzalez in 2 rounds with a smoking combination. It's tough to gauge where he's at. We know who his dad is. We know what his dad has accomplished, but he can punch. He can put them together. I'll be interested to see where he goes around 140 pounds. I don't know if he's fully set in there, if he might go down to 135, but I think of all the Vargas kids that I've seen fight so far, I'd say he's the one with the most upside.
Oh, he's the best. And he's fun to watch. I mean, I think most of us on here were a big fan of his dad. I liked, he had that little curl on his head he did. I was a big fan.
Machismo personified.
Yeah, I mean, I was a big fan of his dad because when I guess I wouldn't die. I was pretty big into boxing then, but you remember when I hadn't been watching boxing for a lot of years when he fought De La Hoya. They had the whole I'm Mexican, you're not Mexican thing. That was the big, that was just a huge. That's when I could really got into that. And then De La Hoya just beat the shit out of him. But yeah, he's got something, his son, and he could. I don't think his power is. I know he hasn't fought a lot of top guys, but I think his power is real because you could just see when he lands, it hurts, even from the first shot to the last one. So there's something there with him. I don't know where. There's no point of rushing him because I don't think he's young, isn't he? I don't think he's that old. But his dad's definitely going to give him. And you remember with his dad, though, I mean, maybe he needs to rush him because, his dad had a very short prime shelf life.
His dad was fighting better fighters when he was 23 and 24 than most fighters will fight in entire lives.
His
but
dad was
he was done when he was 30.
15 some fights in, you're fighting Corte and you're fighting all these guys, and that was just because his machismo attitude. He was going in versus everybody. And so if anybody listening hasn't watched a lot of Vargas fights, go back and watch him because he was. No, I wouldn't watch the last few years, but I'd watch the early years, and he was always awesome to watch. Always fun. The press conferences, everything. So his son is going to have a lot to live up to, but he definitely has the power, and he definitely has the look.
Yeah, he was. The only way I could kind of describe it, people. Well, it wouldn't probably help to do a comparison from a guy from the same era, but Fernando Vargas is basically a polished Ricardo Mayorga, a polished Mexican American Ricardo Mayorga. Their little fight, even though it was shit, that was the end of his career. The build up to that was fun. The trash talk was absolutely wonderful. But he was, you talk early. Fernando Vargas, I think, because he fought Winky Wright, Oscar De La Hoya, Felix Trinidad, Ricardo Mayorga. Who else? Who am I missing in there? And this is just off the top of my head. And I mean, this is a guy with.
He fought Corte. I think I said Corte. I'm
Corte.
Pretty sure he fought Corte young when he fought Corte. And
Vargas was one of those 21-year-old world champions, wasn't he? Did he win a world title? Did he come out of the Olympics in '96, as a teenager? Then within 15 fights, he was a world champion, and he was 21 years old. And after that, it got really serious, didn't it? And if I'm going to be hard on Vargas, he never won the big one, did he? He never beat any of the big guys, and he was probably done a bit too much too soon. And by the time he was 26, he was finished. But his candle burnt very young, very quickly, didn't it?
Because you can say the same about Tyson. you start so early.
Yeah.
People are like, well, no, you're not even 30 years old and you're almost done. But you don't look at the fact these guys were fighting pro when they were like 18, and they were fighting like really. He wasn't fighting like the Cuevas or the Vivas at 19, 20 years old. They were fighting former world champions, top 10 guys. That takes a lot, especially with his style.
And
he didn't have the kind of style that was going to last.
And I've got to say about Fernando, you had to be a Hall of Famer to beat him. Oscar, Tito, Mosley. You weren't going to. When he was a world champion, when he was hot at the right weight, only Hall of Famers would beat him. He was a very good fighter, but he'd done it all so quick, so young.
Yeah, now he's just enjoying training his kids. I mean, honestly, you got to give him some love on that. He's just kind of enjoying his life post being in the ring. Fair play to him. So let's see here. Was there a card that I missed from the UK on Friday that you guys were talking about, Justin? In the chat?
You'll have to ask Dez. I didn't. If there was, I didn't. The only thing I watched besides the ones we just talked about was the Yabuki fight. I don't know. Dez don't know if there was one Friday. I didn't see it.
Dez. Did you? Was there something on Friday that was happening in y'all's neck of the woods, or I remember the guys talking about something?
Yeah,
if not,
both put me under pressure. You both. The Dez would know. No,
if you didn't watch it, it wouldn't matter.
No, I did. I caught some of it. The kid Pat Brown. Well, I think
Pat Brown. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I did watch that. I did watch that.
Yeah, he was making his debut.
I did watch that.
Yeah, so Pat's come out the Olympics and he sells a ticket in the northwest of England, and it's boxing country up there. They like their sport, and Pat had his debut. Now, I watched the debut, and it was it's an interesting one because he got hit too often, and the kid he was boxing had won one of his last 6, so he was always going to. It was like Pat's a bit like Kevin Mitchell. He's a bit like Joe Ward. We expect him to do things, and the next 10 fights, we expect him to walk through everyone. But I think what I always say to kids like Brown, that's your debut. You've got it out the way. Now, let's start taking this very seriously, because it's going to get very serious very quick. And in the next 18 months, we expect to see Pat Brown operating at domestic title level. He's trained by Jamie Moore, and he's managed by I can see the kid's face, but I can't tell you his name. But I wonder why these young fighters have to have managers. Why don't you just say to your trainer, can you deal with my sparring? Can you make sure that I get the right fights at the right time over the next 24 months? Let's just get there and see where we are. It's his debut. He caught a few. He landed a few himself. He sold a lot of tickets. Let's just see where Pat goes in the next 2 years. But it's done now. He's out of the way.
I think you're right about it. I don't think it was the fact that I think he just got a little excited in his debut.
Correct. Yeah.
And he was trying to go for too. He was trying to go for too much, and it left him open. And that's why that guy was landing the shots, because he was over eager is the best way to put it, and he wanted to impress all those people. But you're right. He's definitely got to tighten it up a little bit, because that Grandon guy landed some good shots. He touched him up, and I think that's what most people were kind of probably thinking. Hey, wait a minute, this guy's our Olympian, and he got touched up, and you usually don't happen in your debut when you're that big hyped up. But you're right. I think it was just he was so juiced up that you're right. Train a little bit, get back in there, and kind of realize, hey, we gotta calm down. You had the debut. Let's move on. Let's tighten it up a little bit. We got past that, and I think he'll be better the next few times.
We hope so, yeah. My only criticism, not a criticism, my only observation was he's trained by Jamie Moore, who's a very credible trainer. But almost like he adopted Jamie Moore's fighting style. And I don't think he should be doing that. And from what I saw on Friday, and we must emphasize this point. It is his debut. He sold a lot of tickets. There's an awful lot of weight of expectation on a debut kid. He's excited. Let's get it out of the way. But there's got to be a balance between being exciting, using your strengths as a come forward, front-footed fighter, knowing how to punch, but also not taking too many shots, and definitely not taking too many shots at this level and the next 2 or 3 levels. He's got to get through domestic level looking almost a class above, because there will be challenges and there will be a few obstacles. He might even get caught out. Doesn't mean he can't come again. But I want to see him get through this domestic scene where we can say, no, a bit like Nick Ball did. No, he looks like he's a class above. And let's see how he gets on the next level after that. But yeah, agreed. It's his debut. Let's strike it off and let's see how he gets on the next couple of years.
Yeah, you got to just break the ice, right? Get used to it. Get under the professional lights and things like that. It's fill the 3-minute rounds, etc., etc. Anything else that was on that card? I think what was it? Kevin Adjarko, I think you said was on that card.
William Crawler William Crawler won, and Cameron Vuong beat Jordan Flynn. But I never see all them fights. But I'm aware they was all boxing and they won. But I only caught the Pat Brown one.
Yeah, I watched the Vuong Flynn fight. That was entertaining while it lasted. And yeah, Jarko fought tonight. He was the co-main event for the guy.
Oh, on this card, yeah.
Yeah, the guy getting completely destroyed was the main event. He was the Jarko. We talked about it before we come on. He was going against a 3-1 guy, and he labored. He had to really labor versus that 3-1 guy. So I don't know really where he goes from here, because that just looked like a struggle the whole fight.
All right. Well, and the only other fight I think worth talking about, and this was a fun fare for a Saturday morning, was Masamichi Yabuchi picking up another title at 112 pounds. This one against Angel Alaya in what was a really entertaining fight where y'all went down first round, second round, came back, started to find a jab and some good right hands. And then in the 12th round, Yabuki dropped him again and put a little onslaught. The ref stepped in. Some people says a little bit early. I don't know what was going to happen there. I don't think there was any way on the cards. Cards apparently were a little bit funky. I thought the fight was actually pretty damn close, but that would have easily sealed the deal for Yabuki. But he is, I'll tell you what, Masamichi Yabuki, such an interesting fighter. He lost like 3 of his first 10 fights, but 2 of those defeats were to a decision loss over 4 rounds to a young fighter by the name of Junto Nakatani. And then he had a first-round knockout loss to Seigo Akui, who we just saw in that fantastic fight with Kenshiro Taraji, who he took his O. And then he did lose the next fight to him. And it's a shame Taraji is moving up to 115 pounds, because I would love a rubber match at 112 with 3 belts on the line. Maybe they can talk Kenshiro into one more, because, man, that would be good fun. But Yabuki owned this night, one of the more interesting fighters with less than 20 wins and 4 losses on his resume. But Justin, it was another exciting 112-pound fight from Japan with another 12th round stoppage. There's just something special about Japanese boxing around the flyweight division, or just in general, as I believe as Damo corrected me in the chat.
Well, I think Ibuki sums it up. It doesn't matter if you lose. I mean, losses don't mean anything. I mean, you can lose fights and still look at Farmer. I mean, but I think that fight, for me, Yabuki was getting him pretty good until the headbutt. And then after that, because that was nasty.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, both of them were bleeding pretty good.
And once he started just spitting blood out, that's when the other guy come on, because the Ayala come on because Ibuki was just pouring blood out of his face, and then he got another headbutt. So he had like 3 cuts that were just pouring blood, but down his face, and Yabuki had to just fight. And then Ayala got cut, and then that was a fun fight. The blood, I think I posted a picture on the WhatsApp. Blood was everywhere. They were just, because both guys had like huge gashes, and it was just spurting out. But you're right, Yabuki's fun. Ayala, I'd watch Ayala again. I think, maybe it was just me, but I thought if he hadn't got cut as early as he did, I think Yabuki would have stopped him earlier. I think he was getting to him a little bit, and then boom, they just nailed heads. And I don't think it was. I think Ayala Ayala was leading with his head as much. I think it was just the way they were fighting. Sometimes it's not the guys doing it on purpose. It's just they're both going in. I think the one headbutt, they both threw their heads in. But you're right, Yabuki, the Japanese guys are just different now. They're all tough. They're all entertaining. They're all going to show up. They're all warriors. I guess this might sound stupid, but they still have that kind of samurai personality over there. They still believe in all that.
Code of honor kind of shit.
You're not going to get many Japanese fighters quit or not try. And so, you rarely find a card over there where you're not going to get an entertaining fight. And I think people who don't watch the lower weight classes, and I know there's a lot of people that don't watch them, you're missing out on a lot of good fights because these guys are usually well matched because they have to be because they don't make a lot of money. So they have to fight each other and they all show up. So, Yabuki, that was a good fight. I mean, you would have to – if he hadn't have stopped him, they probably would have rematched it. But since he's got the stoppage, he's probably not going to want to rematch Ayala again. So he'll probably move on to something else. But you're right. Yeah, there's just a lot of options.
If they can't keep Taraji down at 112 for one more fight in unification, I say it's time for a rematch with Akui. That was 12 fights and 5-6 years ago.
Can you imagine that war? I mean, that is going to be a war if they go against each other because neither guy. You're going to have to pin the other guy to the mat. I mean, you're going to have to just lay him out for them to stop coming. Because look at Yabuki. There's no telling how much blood he lost last night.
Oh, he needed a transfusion.
Yeah, because it was. It was like you couldn't even see his chest or his face. It was coming out so much. Like I said, and so I hope they make that. And you might as well because, like we just said, there's not a lot of options. They have to fight each other. And an all Japanese fight, you might as well just throw them in there. It'll sell. We'll get up at 3 or 4 in the morning and watch it. So might as well put them in there.
Yeah, put it on. They should put it on the Inoue Akhmadaliev undercard. That'd be freaking awesome.
Yeah, I would be because that might steal the show. It will steal the show because Inoue is it will be the better fight probably on the card.
I'm going to give you an early prediction here. Check this out, Des. You might like this one. Akhmadaliev goes 12 with Inoue.
Yeah, I could see where you come to that. Yeah, I can see why you think that. I don't know though. Okay. I don't doubt it. Yeah, it's a brilliant fight, and if anyone could do it, Akhmadaliev's the one to do it. So you're saying Inoue wins on points?
Yep. I'm not saying it loses. Yeah. I'm not saying it's even remotely close, but I think Akhmadaliev can go 12 with him. I think Cardenas might end up going 9 or 10 with him. Actually, Cardenas
you'll get good value on that. You'll get good value on that, Matty. Anyone going points with Inoue, you'll get really good value on that.
Well, Inoue takes his time, and Akhmadaliev is. I mean, you're not going to find many guys that have as much experience as he does, as far as different styles and different ways. So I can see him definitely doing enough and using enough of his stuff he's learned all these years to get through 12. I could definitely see that happen. And will it happen? I'm not going to bet on it, but you're right. I could definitely see him making his way through 12 somehow.
Yeah, that's one of those fights. If you want to talk like the difference between like taking a swing for the fences and just smart betting kind of things. If you're looking at a fight like that and you're thinking, man, I could see Akhmadaliev making it to 12 rounds with Inoue. Well, when fight time comes up, what's the over-under at where you're getting, you're close to even money? If you're looking at an over-under a 6.5, 7.5 on a fight like that, and you're thinking it could go 12, just take the over, And if it goes 12, you might be upset. Oh, I could have gotten 5-1 or what the fuck ever on it at the end of the day. But you know what? You got a W. Never dismiss putting money in your pocket. That's the way I look at it.
I've done that twice. I went for Isaac Chilemba to go to 12 with Kovalev, and I'd done.
That was a ballsy pick.
Yeah, but if anyone could do it, Chilemba could. And I got like 6-1 because anything Kovalev hit was going over. But we just knew so much about Isaac, and we knew how we could stink the place out and frustrate someone like a Kovalev. And the second time I did it it was a brilliant event because I said to a friend of mine, we should have a few quid on this. And that was Daenerys against Inoue in the first one. And how that got to the final bell, I'll never know. Both guys were getting tagged, and Lemaire was
when he went down on that body shot in the 11th, you had to be like, "Get up, motherfucker! Get up!"
We was jumping around. We couldn't because we get it at 11 o'clock in the morning over here. It was a brilliant day, but again, we got fantastic value on that one. But that's maybe another one I might look at. Akmadaliev to go to full 12 with Inoue.
Yeah. Shalimba's like a bigger version of Ben Tacky.
Yeah.
That guy, he does enough, and he doesn't get knocked out.
He could hold a fucking shot.
God,
that guy was made of bricks.
Think about it. Look at the punchers Ben Tacky fought. Nobody. You could really not move him. The man just could take anything almost. That's one of those deals. That's not training. I mean, part of it's training, but you've got to be born with that.
Who did he go the distance? Didn't he go the distance with Tszyu?
Yeah, he went with Tszyu, I think.
Hatton, he went the distance.
Yep. He went the distance with. I had to look his career up because Ben Tacky went the distance with almost everybody.
It might have been someone like a Juan Urango or someone like that. He might have went 12 with kind of thing too. I think there was some decent little.
Who's the only person to stop? Who's the only person that stopped him?
To stop Ben Tacky.
Yeah.
God damn! I used to actually know the answer to that question.
Only one person could do it.
Who was it?
I've just looked at his box rec. A guy called Raymond Alvarez, and it was Ben Tacky's very last fight. Stopped him in 4 rounds.
Well, look at
all them great fighters, all them Hall of Famers couldn't do it. But some fella called Raymond Alvarez got him at the right time and got that now.
Some cunt from rural Mexico probably stopped you.
Because Tacky fought Hatton, Sharmba Mitchell, he fought Tszyu, he fought John Molina, Freddie Pendleton.
Justin, one after the other. He fought Costa Tszyu, Sharmba Mitchell, and Ricky Hatton, one after the other.
Yeah, this is a blast from the past. Y'all remember Golden Johnson?
Yeah, he got taken out in a round by Antonio Margarito. At the
he did, but I like Golden Johnson. He was one of those guys. Remember he fought Vicious, Vivian Harris. Maybe I'm just a boxing nerd, or maybe I love this stuff. But I love going to Box Rec sometimes when I've got nothing to do that day, like on the truck. And start going through the old names, and then start looking at the names. Remember, like I said, Vicious, Vivian Harris, Teddy Reed, all these guys. I'm like, these names were just back in the day. Fighters were just different than they are now. These Golden Johnson fought like 5 Hall of Famers. I mean, these guys just fought everybody. They didn't care. And another thing is, they wasn't getting paid that much. Freaking Brian Norman is turning down 1.5. Vivian Harris, Golden Johnson would have cut their arm off to get paid $1.5 million to fight somebody. And they were fighting Hall of Famers in their prime, probably making like $50, $100 grand. And people don't appreciate these guys. These guys were like, the reason fighters are even here is because you had guys like this that, got people into boxing. I mean, he fought everybody. This is crazy how people are turning down $1.5 million because they said they deserve more. And then you go out and fight like a Vivas. And I think the market, we're not going to go down this road, but the market has changed so much that you should be worth what you're worth. I mean, I understand that. Get what you're worth. But the market today is everybody overvalues what they're worth.
Yep.
And that causes the problems.
Oh, don't
We're
worry.
not all worth millions of dollars. That's not how life works.
Let the economy goes to shit, and fucking everyone will know their market value very quickly once more. But I'll tell you, what I really like about Golden Johnson, and it's actually not him, it's his father. Think about Mr. Johnson, who, when his son was born, said, "This kid is gonna know how to fuck. This kid's name is gonna be Golden Johnson."
Yeah.
Like, that's confidence. That's the kind of confidence that a dad should have in their kid. I'm naming this motherfucker Golden Johnson. He's banging hose.
And he had a good run. I mean, the man fought. Yeah, like I said, just go through his record. If anybody's sitting there just looking at some of these guys, like the blast from the past, some of the names people fought is awesome. We just don't get that anymore. You only have a few guys, and perfect example would be Tevin Farmer. Guys like that will pretty much fight anybody. Except,
it takes a cross-eyed guy who got shot in the fucking hand to like have the will to do it. Like, if somebody's got to do it, it's gonna be me.
Yeah, that was just my rant. I just always.
No, you're cool, man. I love it.
I just enjoy going through those old guys, and then going on YouTube and watching their fights and shit. I'll probably watch a Golden Johnson fight tonight now. When I think about it.
No, there's some good fighters in the day, and I'll tell you, a lot of it does have to do with like the economic conditions and shit that you grow up in, and like the better off a culture it becomes financially, the the less fire their fighters tend to have in the ring. It's just an issue of desire a lot of times. But anyhow, I have this question up here from Michael Thompson because I liked it as we were discussing the flatness of the 147 division, and I just thought I'd bring it over for a sidebar. He says, question for the panel. Thinks better to reign undisputed over a weaker division or go up for more dangerous but better paid fights. And, I think you kind of got to look at that situationally. And what I'd like to see fighters do is kind of what happened to Terrence Crawford at 140 pounds, where they saw this path for just a few fights at 140 and he could just, take it down. And they did. He just ran through it real quick like that. And, managed to do it in a handful of fights at 147 too. They kind of they didn't fuck around when the competition wasn't that stacked. But I think is picking up belts is one thing, but it's when you reign undisputed, Justin, in a hot division, when you've climbed the fucking you've become. Oh, let me send it over to Des first. Actually, Des, like when you've climbed to the top of the heap in a stacked division of absolute killers, like history remembers that stuff, and it's one of those issues. Like, not many people are going to remember what Crawford did at 135 or 140, but they remember 147 pounds because he went in there and he just beat the shit out of Jeff Horn, who beat Pacquiao, and then he knocked out Sean Porter. No one had ever done that before, and he made Errol Spence look like a chump, in just a handful of fights. But people will remember that. They don't remember what he did at 135 or 140 as much.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Bang on, mate. And shout out to Michael Thompson, massive friend of our pod. Does he thinks it's better to reign undisputed over a weak division or go up for more dangerous but better paid fights? So let's look at someone. I mean, the example you just gave there with Bud is absolutely correct. And you could talk about Boots in the same vein. Boots could end up being the number one kid at 47 and get paid half the money for a Brian Norman, which is potentially twice as dangerous as perhaps a Keith Thurman or an Ortiz or a Majimov at this time. I'm not saying that them guys at super welter are more dangerous than Norman, but the money might be halved. So you think, I've done this at 147. I'm not going to fight a Brian Norman who's got everything to lose. I've got nothing to gain. I'm going to go to a super welter and I'm going to look at the big fights, and the big fights are going to pay me. And I've got to be honest, I would always, if a fighter's proved he's world class and has got a world title, I would then say, right, you've ticked that box. Now go and earn some money. Because I just don't want fighters to come out of boxing with nothing. I want them to come out with a right few quid so they can go into their next career financially secure and with a little bit of room to breathe, a little bit of wiggle room. And I can't stand the idea that a fighter can be, we've got quite a few in this country, you're a world champion, sometimes a two-weight world champion, yet you've now got to go and pack boxes after your career's finished. So
yeah, they end up destitute. It's
because you have to understand as well. Boxers live, like, I know we see them as these amazing titans. Boxers live very sheltered lives and they walk very narrow paths. They're not particularly astute. They're not financially literate. They're not business people. They're not money getters. They're boxers and they're brilliant at that. But that's pretty much all they are, which is why you see these kids, I need a manager, I need a promoter, no, you don't. You just need a head on your shoulders, but they haven't got that. So I've sort of segued off now onto a bit of a rant, but I like to see fighters get well paid, be financially secure, and go into their next life with a bit of breathing space and an opportunity to do what they're good at and what they're passionate about. So I like the idea that someone like a John Ryder's earned really good money. Now we can spend the next 5 or 6 years really working on being a trainer and a good trainer and developing a good stable. But he's got the financial breathing space to do that after the career he's had. So my answer to the question is I would always push fighters to the more money fights if you've already proved yourself at a division and you've got a world title to your name.
All right. Justin, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think personally it's pretty cool when you're undisputed in anything you do. But I agree with Dez as well. I mean, if there's nobody to fight, it's sort of like the Akhmadaliev thing. No, the guy, the middleweight guy. I mean, there's nobody for him to fight there, so he needs to move up.
Ali Manala.
Yeah, there's nothing for him to do there. So I guess he would be the example of Dez. Is like, you've already proven you're too good for where you are. Go ahead and move up if there's more money, which there is more money to be made. But I think every situation obviously is going to be different. It just depends on if, everybody's different. Can you move up? Can you? There's just a lot of things. But if I had to choose, I just always like the undisputed part. But like Dad said, y'all talking about, I know he was talking about people and money, and I agree with it. You need to take the money as well, because there's a guy who lives about an hour from here. Nobody knows who this fighter was, but he's from North Carolina. He's Kelvin Seabrooks. He was the ESPN featherweight top 10 of the decade of the 80s.
Wow.
And he defended his title like 3 times. He didn't beat any big names, but he's a security guard now. And he says, he don't have any money. He didn't make any money fighting. He didn't know what to do with all the money he did make, and he just fought at the wrong time. So I imagine him looking back now, he would have definitely took the move up instead of trying to be undisputed. But he's the perfect example of, he's not had a bad life, but it's sort of like, once again, I'll say it, turning down $1.5 million when a guy like Seabrooks, who was a champion on the ESPN list, he didn't make that probably in almost his whole career fighting at those lower weights.
Yeah, not even adjusted for inflation. You know?
And that's why it bugs you. You're like, come on, man. These guys out here are giving it all, and people saying they're too good for this or too good for that. And I agree with this. If the money's there, you should take it, even if you're maybe not the best in your division. You always need to take the money, because, especially in boxing, if they're offering you the money, take it, because you can lose easily the next fight, and then that money's gone.
Yeah. I remember 30 years ago, I sat in a changing room with a boxer, and he had the dilemma. Does he fight for one of them WBF world titles, or does he stay with the route of fighting for a British title? And I said, well, what's the money? And he said, well, if I fight for a British title, I'll get 10 grand. But if I fight for the WBF, I'm going to get 25 grand. And I said, so what's the pathway afterwards? He said, well, if I win my British title, I'll defend it. So if I can defend it 3 times this year, I might get between 30 and 40 grand. But if I win the WBF, I get the 25 for fighting for it. And then they've promised me 38 for my first defense. And then after that, I can get 50. And if I can do that and they can manipulate another fighter, I could fight for a genuine world title and get 150 grand. So over the next 2 years, I could get $250,000, as opposed to fighting for the British title 3 times and getting between 30 and 40. So we concluded then, it's a no-brainer. You've got to go with the money. Forget this legacy thing, because the disparity, the difference between the money is too great. And there's nothing worse than a fighter. And remember, what we see in the pros is a fighter at the second half. The first half is done in the amateurs. They start at 9 or 10, and they're going all the way to the 18, 19, 20. They turn pro. It's like snakes and ladders. They drop at the bottom and go all again. And by the time they get to the end of their pro career, these guys have been in it for 20 years, 2 decades, sometimes more. So it breaks my heart when fighters have got all this knowledge, have done all this, have done so much in the hardest sport, only to come out with a few quid, or nothing sustainable, so they can transfer what they've done into their next phase of their life. So, yeah, it's a bit bleak, but I would always say to a fighter, it's a balancing act, and legacy is important. But unfortunately, I always believe that having a few quid, having a bit of breathing space, and being financially secure overrides everything.
And then damn Dillian White's made like $100 million.
Yeah, and
makes me sad every time. I'm like, he's like you said, the fighters. I just named that one guy from around here, and then Dillian White's made $100-some million. Sometimes makes me sick to my stomach to think, like you said, all the guys. But when you said the WBF, I thought about the WBU because that's the one that Mickey Ward beat Cautionary was for the WBU. That I don't know if I would consider that a real world title. I know that. So when you said the WBF, that's the first thing I thought. It was the WBU. I think is what Mickey Ward beat Cautionary for.
And the WBU is what Ricky Hatton held for about 3 years and defended it all that. And he earned good money out of it because he could sell a ticket and it worked for him. And they manipulated it and they called it a world title. And he got the Costa Zoo fight at the right time, right place. And then he kicked on. And it was fantastic. But it doesn't always work like that for everyone else. You know, sometimes, and you might say, look, Ricky Hatton was getting $200,000 for defending that WBU title, but he could sell out the MEN and he had networks clamoring for him. But a lot of other fighters could say, well, I was a WBU champion, you know, and I had 3 defenses and they paid me 45, 50 grand a defense. I got 150 grand out of it. I went and bought my house, and my house is what is in my family home, and we still live in it now. I'm okay with that. I'm good with that. But I'd much rather someone be able to tell me that story than say, and I was a British champion and I defended it 3 times and I got 30 odd grand for it, and then I paid my tax bill and I bought myself a new car, and that was a chapter that's long gone now. I'd much rather boxers have a financial legacy if I had to choose between a financial legacy and a professional one.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that path and where it can lead you too. I mean, that was interesting you said about Hatton, and yeah, I mean, he did hold that belt for a good spell before he fought Tszyu. But just that made me thinking. I'll tell you what, Hatton's run from Tszyu up until he fought Floyd Mayweather, that's an underrated stretch of wins. Even if you think the Collazo one was a little bit sketch, that was a good run of W's there. And that Mousa KO was fucking vile.
Yeah, but I think Ricky Hatton is an interesting one. So I'm gonna need your help, right? And the guys in the chat can throw some names up. But the critics of Ricky Hatton, I'm not a critic. I really enjoyed Ricky Hatton's career, and I think he'd done really, really well. And he fought some great names. But Ricky Hatton was in an era where there was Arturo Gatti, Shea Neary, Zab Judah, Junior Witter, DeMarcus Corley, Vivian Harris, and I could probably name another 4 or 5, and he never fought any of them. And I think that's what people always looked at with Ricky. They've always pictured a one that was perhaps Luis Collazo coming up, Juan Lascano, okay, Paulie Malignaggi couldn't punch.
Hold on,
Mousa.
He went up for Collazo. Collazo was the career welterweight.
Sorry, I meant Luis Castillo. I do apologise. I meant Luis Castillo.
Because Castillo, yes.
Yeah, the Collazo one. Yeah, the Collazo one nearly caught him out, though, didn't he? Collazo was the Brooklyn welterweight that Ricky was told don't do this, but he wanted to be a 2-weight world champion, and that caught him out. He got away with that one. But if you look at the Olivieras, the Carlos Mausers, the Juan Urango's a really hard fight. Juan Lascano, Paulie Malignaggi, they was maybe the second tier of the fighters of that era. And I think that's probably where people could maybe pick holes in Ricky Hatton's record. Although it's unfair because he fought Pacquiao, he fought Mayweather, he fought Tszyu. Luis Collazo was what he was. But I just felt that in the era that he lived in, and the names I just mentioned that he didn't fight, I think that's probably where people level their criticisms at Ricky Hatton. And in that run where he was a WBU champion, and they was bringing up Michael Stewart and Dennis Pedersen and, you know, John Hutchinson and Stephen Smith, people like that, it was a little bit, I don't want to be critical of Ricky Hatton. I'm really conscious not to be overcritical, but I think boxing purists at the time, which I was one, would have said there's a lot better out there that they're not bringing in, and I could see why they was doing that.
Well, when you look at the fact that, I mean, the win over Tszyu, hell of a win. And if you can, nitpick the Jose Luis Castillo fight, but there was not really anything on Castillo's record to say that he was on the downhill slide. He was, one of the better fighters of the 135-pound division, who was a pretty lanky guy at that weight, or not lanky necessarily, but big for the weight. And coming up to 140, if I don't even remember if Ricky was the favorite in that fight. Castillo.
What fight was it? What fight was this? Is this
Jose Luis Castillo? Because Castillo was still Castillo in the eyes of many at that point in time. I think he was coming off.
He wasn't still Castillo then. I think Hatton should have been
the victory over Corrales, wasn't he at the time?
Yeah, but I don't. Yeah, but I think they picked the right time to break
Didn't the Corrales fights empty him?
Yeah, they did. They picked the right time to bring Castillo over. They picked and choose the right. They definitely handpicked him at the perfect time because there wasn't a lot left, in my opinion.
And they brought him up, didn't they? Because he was that was a
Well, he couldn't make 135. He was campaigning at 140 on purpose. Castillo, that is.
But his better days were at a lighter weight, weren't they? And this is a Hall of Fame, but this is a Hall of Famer that's been through Mayweather twice and Diego Corrales twice and the whole Casamayer. And he'd fought all them Hall of Famers, didn't he? At a much lighter weight.
There was a great stack of fighters.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was a great stack of fighters.
People don't remember Joel Casamayer. People don't remember Joel Casamayer. I think he kind of gets overlooked.
Yoel Casamayer. I can't even say his fucking name right.
Yeah, he kind of gets overlooked when you talk about those guys back then, but he was really good to watch. Yeah, Isolino Freitas.
It's because he was it was because he was such a negative fighter at times. He ended up in some good fights, but he could turn it fight real sloppy.
Think about it. Showtime at that time had Freitas, they had Casamayor, they had Corrales, they had Castillo, all fighting each other kind of around that same time. Those were good times.
And Matty, don't forget. Yeah. Looking at Castillo's record, he'd beaten Jorge Paez. He'd done 24 rounds with Stevie Johnson, 24 rounds with Floyd Mayweather. He'd done 12 rounds with Casamayor. He'd done that
24 rounds with the Corrales.
No, he didn't. He's
done 15 rounds with Corrales.
Yeah,
15 with Corrales.
Yeah, and we know what them first 10 rounds were like, don't we? So like this, he'd done a bit of a Roberto Duran. He'd had a Hall of Fame career before he got to Ricky Hatton, and so I'm not. By the way, I'm not trying to diminish Ricky Hatton at all. Ricky Hatton had a brilliant career and done really, really well. But in answer to the question, anyone at the time, and I remember it really well, that criticised Ricky's run, they looked at the 7 or 8 guys at 40 and 47 and thought, Ricky, you're bouncing between the two, but you're picking Mausa and Urango and Collazo, and you're not picking any of these guys. And the 10 fights he'd had at the MEN, he'd done pretty much the same. And something I think will always follow Ricky Hatton about in this country was he never gave Junior Witter that fight. And in this country, if you've got 2 kids at the same weight, they should box. There's nothing, it's not law. It's not written in stone. But if you're the best and he's the best, well, let's see you box off. And we never saw that with Ricky Hatton. It was almost like, no, I'm not gonna take that fight. I'm not gonna give you that fight. And I just think that's always been held against Ricky a little bit in boxing circles.
Yeah. I'll tell you the fight. Oddly enough, people throw out a lot of different fights they wish Hatton would have had at 140 pounds. I would have liked to have seen him fight Ricardo Torres at 140 pounds because I think that would have been a fucking bloodbath war. For anyone who doesn't remember Ricardo Torres' fight with Miguel Cotto, I mean, that fight was off the fucking wall. But anyhow, yeah, that one would have been good.
And can I just say, Matty, there were some ruthless guys coming up at that time at 40 and 47. And remind me who they were. Kelson Pinto was one of them. And there was another one that
Kendall Holt was around that time.
Kendall Holt was around that time, but there was another one from sort of a South American country. And I think Cotto boxed them both. And Cotto
Ricardo
was
Torres. You Ricardo
Torres was Ricardo Torres, another one. And there were some ruthless guys coming up. And, you know, guys like Zepeda and Miguel Cotto, and even to a degree, you know, Arturo Gatti was showing us how their careers were going. And a lot of boxing people, without being overly critical of Ricky, because had a really good career, were saying, well, why are you not taking these fights? Why are you not even fighting Junior Witter? And it was very similar. And this is almost like, you know, I'm very similar to Nazim Hamid to a degree, you know, who was operating at a time when there was so many brilliant fighters at super bantam to super feather. And Naz didn't fight any of them. And there were some brilliant fighters, but he never fought any of them. So the only thing you can say about the Hattons and the Naz is, yes, you had very good careers. You're both Hall of Famers. And what you did for British boxing will never be forgotten. But you was very selective.
Yeah, it's well. That's if you look at it, it's you know, boxing fans could be disappointed by the fights missed, but if you look at the fact that he went on a path that ended up with mega fights against Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao, obviously he chose right in that regard. In everything else in life, I think he has chosen wrong. But that aspect in life,
do you know the ironic thing? Do you know the ironic thing at them fights, Matty? I went out to Vegas and watched the Hatton and Mayweather fight, and I was very close to a lot of boxing people at the Hatton and Pacquiao fight, and it's really hard to believe now, but at the time, everybody thought Ricky Hatton would be too big, too intense for both of them. They thought that Ricky Hatton was going to be like this Roberto Duran, but we didn't realise how good Mayweather was and how big and strong Pacquiao was. But at the time, and this sort of you could sort of go into that conversation of your worst picks. I thought John Gorman would beat Daniel Dubois at the time. I can't believe that now. But at the time, I thought John Gorman would stand Daniel Dubois on his head because Daniel Dubois never showed me he could box and he could handle a boxer. And I thought John Gorman was that boxer. It's hard to believe you even thought that now. But at the time, there was a load of people in this country that thought Ricky Hatton would be too intense and too strong for Floyd Mayweather. And they thought it would be too big for Manny Pacquiao, who was coming up through the weights. Hard to believe in it.
It was a crazy time. And going back to when people thought that Larry Merchant was out of his gourd for suggesting that Manny Pacquiao take on Oscar De La Hoya, and it's a rare moment when you get to see something like that. Would I argue steroids were involved? Absolutely. But that's one of the reasons why I can absolutely get behind a potential fight between Canelo and Terrence Crawford. Crazy shit happens, as far as reaching back to that question, especially if you can get paid and get paid big, man. Reach for the stars. Like Charlo gave a non-effort. Like I think the difference between a guy like Crawford and Charlo, jumping up a couple of divisions to take on Canelo, is Charlo clearly was there for a fucking check, and you haven't heard shit about him since, right? Whereas Bud Crawford might be getting that check, but he's chasing history too. Like different people are fueled by different things. Charlo brothers have never impressed me in any of their intangibles personally. But,
and
yes.
I remember I'm talking about Pacquiao. I thought he'd flatlined at super feather, and when he boxed David Diaz at lightweight, we all said it's too big a jump. He's going to get annihilated. And he gave David Diaz probably one of the worst beatings I've ever seen in a ring.
I remember him just fucking working angles, just left, right.
It was awful. It was awful.
And Diaz didn't know what to do. And almost in the dead center of the ring, he just fucking collapsed. There was nothing left. Like one of the greatest displays of heart I've ever seen. But I felt like it went 3-4 rounds longer than was at all necessary. So, but that's just one guy's opinion. I'm not a referee. Why should my opinion matter whatsoever? Let's see here. I don't know if this has happened already or if this is going to be happening here in a few hours or whatever, but Melvin Jerusalem, Yudai Shigioka is coming around. Let's see. Here's a card, and I'll look up what's on the rest of it for you, but maybe you'll know something happening as far as this goes. Des, we got Daniel Blenda dos Santos against Shakan Pitters from London. I know you probably know at least one of those guys.
No, I don't think I do, Matty. I've got to look at the card. I don't recall the names.
Shakon Pitters is the really tall guy. It's like 6'6", 6'7", I think.
Oh, did you say Pitters on that?
Pitter, yeah, Shakon Pitters is the real like tall guy.
Yeah,
like,
Pitters. Maybe it could be pronounced Peters for all I know.
Pitters,
Yeah,
probably.
Pitters. Yeah. Let's have a look, Matt. So you're saying he's boxing next week, Matty?
Yeah, against Daniel
Against
Blenda dos
Santos.
Santos.
Oh yeah, we spoke about this one before, haven't we? It's at it's in your call. Yeah, I mean it's a small hall show.
That's a decent fight. Ben Crocker against Tiernan Bradley, 14-0 against 10-0. I guess that one might be a little bit of an interesting one.
And Pitters is boxing for the European title.
Yeah. Let's see. Who did Dos Santos lose to? He lost to Joshua Boazzi, so no real shame in that one. That's a high level of confidence. But he hasn't really beaten anyone of note either. Yeah, one of those crazy.
Maybe some of the lads in the chat might know Dos Santos. I think someone did mention Dos Santos before. It looks like a hard fight though for both of them because Pitters is of a level, and I'm not quite sure he's European level, but I don't know much about Dos Santos.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, as I can see on his record, hasn't beat anyone of note really. One of those records just kind of beat on the chumps of the world. Let's see here.
But Pitters has never won above area. Pitters has never won above area level either. So you know, Pitters' best wins are sort of English title level. So it's a hard to fight for the European title. It's it depends what the matchmaker's been like. But if he wins it, I don't know where he goes after that because he's never been at this level yet. Shakon Pitters, he's not a puncher. It's going to be a hard. He might get through Dos Santos, but that's a hard title to defend for Shakon Pitters.
Yeah, it gives you something to watch on a Friday at least. I think this Crocker and Tiernan Bradley fight is a little bit more on the interesting side of things, honestly. Two undefeated fighters. Crocker's only real wins are, the two wins against Papadopoulos. Not a whole lot more sitting or less necessarily sitting on the record of Bradley. So that one might be interesting. And what is that? It's for a European belt of some sort. Yeah, the super lightweight title. So yeah, that might not be a little bad one on there for you guys for a Friday to check out.
And they've got Huey Fury out on that card as well.
Yeah, against the always formidable TBA.
Yeah, so this is a lot of guys in the UK will know GB Sports. I think they've got some sort of television arrangement. They've got TV arrangement with DAZN. So this will be on DAZN, and it's a small hall promotion. And York Hall in Bethnal Green, it's a small arena. It's about 1,000 people in there. So this is just getting these kids out. Pitters has jumped up a few levels here fighting for a European title. Crocker and Bradley. Crocker's not a puncher, and Bradley's a kid on the up. It'd be an interesting one, that. But the rest of it is just to sort of get these kids out because a lot of these guys, like Huey Fury, hasn't been active, and some of them are just starting out and need to get going. So this would be like a small hall show on a Friday evening, I would have thought. Is it Friday? Yeah, it's next Friday.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right on. So yeah, and then keeping it on that side of the world, we're going to have the card headlined by Joyce and Hergovich that's going to be happening at the Co-op Live Arena in Manchester. Also on that card, going to have Jack Rafferty against Corey O'Regan, David Adelaide against Jamie Tishikiva. Let's see here. Jurgen Uldadaj against Gerardo Mayato, and the Khalil Majid against Alex Murphy, Royston Barney Smith against Cesar Ignacio Paredes, Mark Chamberlain against Miguel Angel Scaringi. I think they're just trying to get him confidence again. Let's see. Yeah, 8-4 guys. So I can only imagine going down this one. But apparently this Delicious Ori is a very exciting prospect. This is his debut at heavyweight. What are your thoughts on this card? Save the main event, and we'll hit that last there. And I'll tell you, you know your damn British boxing. Why don't you take this one, Justin? We'll challenge you.
All right. Well, the Rafferty, that's for the. I remember reading that an article. That's for like the Commonwealth, I think. So they're both undefeated. I think they're both undefeated, so that should be a good fight. Adelaide is the guy that Wardley knocked out, so I guess this is just because he beat that Solomon Dakers his last fight.
Correct, yeah.
And so this is just another, God, that Solomon Dakers, talk about a padded 9-0 record because he was terrible. But Adelaide, I think he's going to be just the British level, but there's nothing wrong with that. He might get a European fight, but there's nothing wrong with that either. He's got some ability. He's interesting to watch. I think he should definitely blow this guy out. I don't know. What other fight she said was on the card?
I'll tell you, I've looked at that real quick, that Rafferty fight. This Corey O'Regan, he has beat fucking nobody up to this point in time. His last 4 opponents, their records are 4-24-1, 17-81-7, 8-35-3, 2-2-2. He has beat fucking nobody. So yeah, bear with me. Let me let's see here.
Oop. Oh, Padley's the one that beat Chamberlain.
Yeah, Padley beat Chamberlain and
I remember that. I remember that fight now. I remember that fight now.
And on the back of the Chamberlain result, Padley got the Shakur Stevenson fight at his Riyadh. Yeah.
Okay, that's right. I'm looking at the card now too. You're right. There's Royston Barney Smith. I remember that name. You can't.
Yeah, the guy he's fighting is a no-hoper, 18-16-1 guy.
You're not going to forget that name, Royston Barney Smith.
No. It sticks out a little bit. Yeah, this
Rafferty. No. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the Rafferty fight is like good just based on like records without exploring them. But that O'Regan he's fought nobody. And Rafferty he's a bit of a fucking puncher. I worry about this kid unless they've been hiding him.
The Commonwealth, I've noticed watching boxing the last 20 years, you will get some random guys fighting for a Commonwealth title that have very padded records that you've never heard of, and like they haven't fought a guy with a winning record. So I know the British is definitely different than the Commonwealth, but the Commonwealth, you will get some random guys that just weasel their way in, I guess is the best way to put it, into a title shot. Because you have a lot of guys, they'll bring over from Nigeria. They'll bring in these guys we've never heard of and fight for the Commonwealth. I think that's like one of the step up belts you get. But you do get some random guys fighting for that one.
Feels like you should have fought for a fucking an area belt somewhere before this, at least to test the waters. I don't know. Honestly, Des, this is a little bit of a weak undercard, huh?
Right, so this show fell out of bed a little bit because, so on this card, we was meant to have Joyce versus Dillian White, but Dillian White got injured.
Hergovich is a good replacement opponent, honestly.
It is, but we also had Lawrence Okoli was on this card, and he was boxing.
Oh, and Richard Riakporhe.
He was boxing Richard Riakporhe. So now let's look at it another way.
That's a huge hole.
Okoli v Riakporhe. You've got Joyce v Dillian White. You've got Adelaide v Jamie TKV. Now you've got a stacked 3, and underneath it, he's bringing back Chamberlain, and you've got the debut of Delicious Oreo, Royston Barney Smith's boxing, and you've got Rafferty and O'Regan. So this card has just been patched up and held together, but it wasn't what it should have been. We've had 2 big dropouts, so they just sort of patched it up and got it over the line. I agree, though. Hergovich is a great replacement.
If this car was a vehicle, it's a Volkswagen that's been turned into a boat by Cubans to get to Florida.
The best fight on here is Adelaide v Jamie TKV, and because
probably
I expect Adelaide to win. I expect Adelaide to stop TKV, but they both know each other. They both come from the same era of the amateurs. They both have boxed each other before. They've spent loads of time in the gym together. So Adelaide might bring out the best of TKV, and we need to see that.
TKV looked really. He looked out of shape his last fight, though. He looked horrible.
Yeah. Your knowledge on British boxing, Justin, is brilliant. Your knowledge on British boxing and British fighters.
I just watched too much. I just watched too much. Might be the.
But you're right. What you're saying, TKV, and I think I said it on this pod. He needs to step it up now because he's not getting his weight right. He's not getting his output high enough. I don't think he's working hard enough. And I saw some poxy posts shown to me in walking around some bar or cafe in whatever part of London he comes from with this trinkety belt he's got, like he's some sort of, some sort of world champion. I don't like it. So I think I'll put it up on the chat. We want to see a bit more from TKV now. We want to see a bit more of the potential. But if he comes in anything but his best, David Adelaide will find him out and stop him. Adelaide had his own challenges, but Adelaide's had a decent career, and he got beat by a good fighter in Fabio Wardley. And the Wardley loss doesn't look so bad now, knowing what we know about Fabio Wardley, what he's gone and done with Big Fraser Clark, and Fabio's talking about fighting for world titles. And I'd put Fabio with a lot of world-class guys now. So the loss against Fabio doesn't look so bad for Adelaide. So that's a really interesting one. Rafferty and O'Regan is what you go for. The more experienced, skilled boxer against someone who's slightly bigger puncher. I don't know about that one. We'll have to, that's an in-play one. And of course, you mentioned Delicious Oreo. A lot's been made of Delicious Oreo because he was an Olympian. And he's got, quite a good social media presence, and it's quite an interesting name. He's making his debut, so he's turned over with Frank. So we'll see a bit more. We'll see a lot more of him in the next 12 months. But I think I said this on our chat in the week. Our guy, Moses Itoma, he has raised the bar for domestic heavyweights in this country. So if you're going to be a heavyweight boxer in this little era, Moses has set the bar for you. Because that kid can really fight, and he's going to go on and do wonderful things. So we'll see how good Delicious is over the next. I hate calling him Delicious. We'll see how Oreo is over the next 12 to 15 months.
Yeah, they're trying to hold this card together. Hopefully, a couple of these fights end up entertaining. But I have a hunch, Justin, the main event.
Matty, how did I just call another geezer? How did I just call another geezer Delicious? Fucking hell. What's going on?
I don't know, man. I didn't name these fucking kids. Justin, I have a feeling that this main event is going to be entertaining. Hergovich landed so many fucking right hands on Daniel Dubois. It just blew my fucking mind. And he threw so many right hands on him. He just kind of ran out of energy. And they share, these guys share, Dubois is a common opponent, different outcome, interestingly enough, but they also share a common opponent in Big Zhile Zhang as well. And Joyce obliterated 2 times with them. Hergovich stood in all right. What I wonder, though, is Hergovich not being the puncher that Zhang is, do you think that we might actually get not necessarily the Joe Joyce that we were excited about a few years ago, but that late round stoppage in a Joe Joyce fight because the other guy just kind of runs out of energy from punching him in the head?
Go back the Homer Simpson style again.
Yeah,
you're right.
I think Dubois executed it, give or take.
Yeah,
Hergovich
is going to land probably 500 right hands on Joyce. He's going to land the shot. It's just I think this fight is simply down to this. Hergovich is going to land shots. What does Joyce have left? Because if Joyce I don't think Joyce has anything left. And Hergovich, I think, will get him. I don't think Hergovich is any good either. But I think you're right. I think Hergovich kind of went into the Dubois fight with the thinking of, I'm going to hit him. I'm going to knock him out early. He wasn't prepared for a fight going past 4 or 5 rounds. I think this time they'll kind of come out a little bit different. I don't think he's going to try to blow him away in the first round, but I think I'm leaning Hergovich in this one. I don't think Joyce has it. Joyce has looked. Has there any fighter dropped off? I mean, I remember y'all talking about Joyce like a couple of years ago. I mean, people really thought he was going to be like the boogeyman. He was going to be, you can't stop him.
Thing about him at one point.
And now
right?
Joyce, I mean, talk about just Zhang just demolished his entire career. It's over. I mean, I hate to say this, but Joyce, you don't want to say anything's over for anybody because you can still land a punch, but Joyce is done as far as doing anything big in this sport. Yeah, kudos to him for keep wanting to make the money and maybe he can work his way into getting a Toma beat down, or maybe that's what they're working for. But if Hergovich just lands those shots, I don't think Joyce can take anything anymore. I think his chin is cracked. I think Zhang busted it. He knocked down the wall. That's over. Joyce doesn't have that same kind of. He can't stand up to it anymore, and I think Hergovich can get him. But if Joyce has just anything left, neither one of them are that good though. So this fight could really go 50 different ways. I just kind of think Hergovich will. I just think he'll get Joyce. I don't think Joyce is going to be able to put his head down first defense and just take 200 more shots again, and then somehow Hergovich is going to wear down. Unless Hergovich his corner just decided, hey, you know what, we're not going to learn anything from the Dubois fight, and we're going to do the exact same thing again and blow out in 4 rounds. Then I'm leaning Hergovich. I think I don't know what it is. Joyce, there can't be nothing left. He has looked pitiful. Was it both Zhang? How many fights after Zhang? He's had 2 since Zhang or 1?
2.
And he looked god-awful both those fights.
And what was his fucking name? That asshole, the bitter guy.
Cash Ali.
Yeah, and and Joyce labored. He looked bad in those 2 fights. Hergovich is definitely way better than those 2 guys. And you saw, this is a different Zhang, I think, but he beat Zhang. So Hergovich, I think, is going to have too much. I think he'll just have, maybe not too much, just enough.
Yeah, I don't. It's tough to say, but you're probably right. I'm seeing here. Hergovich is definitely the favorite in this fight. Joyce paying almost 3-1 as the underdog. Would anything convince you to jump on those odds for Joyce there, Des?
No, certainly not. No. Justin's knowledge on British fighters is really good. And I like the way he's a little bit distant from British fighters. There's no attachment to him, and he called it straight down the line now. He said Joyce has looked pitiful, and he has. Against Cash Ali, and he had 3 or 4 months' notice for Cash Ali. And Cash Ali's a kid who hasn't won an area belt. He looked pitiful. He was awful that night. And on this pod, I think Andy said it and Rob said it. I remember it. I remember the post-fight pod. I don't think Joe Joyce wins his next fight on the back of the way he performed against Cash Ali. He got Derek Chisora, 2024's version of Derek Chisora, and he didn't win it. And Zhilei Zhang absolutely emptied Joe Joyce. Joe Parker done loads of irretrievable damage. And all the fights before that, when we was championing Joe Joyce about this guy that
and his
got
extra thick skull,
and his bone density crap, and this he can take a punch, his Homer Simpson type thing. Okay, he's done. Joyce is done. His motor skills were limited before Zhilei Zhang, and let's not forget Joe Parker, because
he was never fast. He had good timing, right? And you're right, it's his motor skills. His timing's not there anymore.
No, and he was never a talent. He was never someone that could draw on his talent of skill and technique. He was a big, tough kid. But I think the Dubois fight was challenging. Takam, Hammer, Parker, then Zhang emptied him twice. And the time off to Cash Ali, and then the time off with Derek Chisora, I just think it's been a slow decline. I can't think, maybe David Price. I'm trying to think of somebody else that fell off a cliff like this, and it's done. It's just done. And Hergovich is all wrong for Joe Joyce, because I think Hergovich is too big, he's too quick, his feet are too good, and I think they'll know all I've got to do is just get behind a jab and just keep punching Joe Joyce, and he won't be able to get to me. Now, in the past, I've called Hergovich some entitled, precious Eastern European heavyweight that's been pampered and mollycoddled all his amateur life, and thinks that he's entitled to win a world title and in the pros. And all that is true. But the Hergovich I've seen in his career, even in the fights that he's lost, and even in the fights that he's come close, like the Zhilei Zhang one that he got the decision, any version of that Hergovich turns up, he beats Joe Joyce. And if Hergovich was to fight Cash Ali, he stops him in 3 or 4 rounds and he beats Derek Chisora Hergovich. I just can't see how this version of Joe Joyce beats Hergovich. So I'm with Justin. Hergovich wins.
All right. And yeah, we'll be able to catch that one from the UK on Saturday. They'll be obviously in the evening for you guys, late afternoon to early evening over here, depending on your time zone. But before that in the morning, going to have Janabek Ali Mahanala taking on Inoue Ngemasenge. This is going to be happening in Kazakhstan, I do believe. So, if you want to watch that, you go right on ahead. I might find it at some point in time. I probably will. Why act like I have a life? I don't. That one will be on your schedule. And then later on, if you want to keep going, if you're one of those people that can keep going for, falls 16 hours straight without cocaine, because we do not advocate drug use on the Boxing Asylum Nuthouse. You can find your way over to the card that's going to be on ESPN. It's a top-ranked card with a couple of undercard fights that I have listed on DraftKings right now, and we'll just go over these because we are drawing short on time. Abdullah Mason going out there again, taking on Giovanni Cabrera, who we mentioned earlier in this podcast. Quality fighter. He's been in there with some really good opposition. We'll see how Mason takes care of that. A really interesting 140-pound bout between Lindolfo Delgado and Alvis Rodriguez. This one's tight with the books. I think that one is going to be potentially a very interesting fight. But it's all going to be headlined by Richard Torres Jr. Taking on Guido Vianello, who is probably a lot better than we gave him credit for. Everybody kind of wrote him off after that loss to Johnny Rice. But, it was by a cut. Maybe we were ridiculous on that one. He had that really close fight with Efe Ajagba. Then he went up to Canada, and he beat the snot out of Aslanbek Makhmudov. And here he is with a chance at Richard Torres Jr. What are your thoughts on this card, Justin?
It's decent.
Yeah.
I think Mason, this is the really good fight for him because this is a good learning fight. Cabrera is going to come to win. I think Mason will, if he stops him, that'll be, that's a good stoppage, but I think it'll be good learning fight. You got Elvis Rodriguez. That's, I keep forgetting his name. That's Freddie Roach's guy, right?
Yeah.
I think that's Freddie Roach's guy. Him and Delgado is going to be a good fight. I think we talked about Castaneda earlier, didn't we?
Kendo Castaneda, yeah. Yeah, he fought Elvis Rodriguez. Johnson.
Yeah, Elvis Rodriguez decisioned him, I think. So that kind of, how things go around. I think Rodriguez had decisioned him, but Rodriguez he's definitely one of those limited guys. There's nothing to write home about Elvis Rodriguez, and I don't know how he got hooked up with Freddie Roach, but they're kind of like a crossroads fight. In my opinion, him and Delgado, because it's sort of one of them's got to get going. They're both like 20-plus fights. They're kind of I think that's kind of a good little crossroads fight for two younger guys. And then the main event, I think that's going to be an absolute war. I think people don't need to kind of look over that fight because Richard Torres, we're talking about he's not taking elite. This is like more than elite. The step up in competition is ridiculous. Look at the guys he's fought. When Vianello, he has shown he's a tough guy. He's a little bit better than people, like you said, he's a little bit better than people thought he was. This is a massive step up for Richard Torres because especially he has been fighting absolutely trash. Richard Torres. You hate to put these guys down. He's fighting guys that weigh like 300 pounds. He's fighting guys that are probably good Golden Glove guys, or like the roughing, the tough man competitions we have over here. Torres is really stepping it up, and I think Top Rank is probably thinking we've got to see what we got. this is definitely one of them fights where they've kind of, I think they all looked and said, you know what? We've got Villanello. We know what he's going to do. And then Torres, I think it's pretty much, if you've got it, you got it. We're going to find out Saturday. And if he's able to get to Villanello, that's a pretty good win, especially when you look at the junk that he just been fighting. So honestly, that's probably the fight I'm looking to the most this weekend is that main event. It's really going to be interesting if Torres and Villanello. That's going to be a good fight.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think this card is a little bit under the radar. And if Rodriguez fights at the best that I've seen him, he could give Delgado a good fight. And those odds could be legitimately close because Rodriguez is paying just a little bit better than even money. But if he doesn't hit like his peak, I think that Delgado is going to beat him reasonably easy. All in all, any thoughts on this card, Des?
No, it's beautifully summed up by Justin. It's very similar to our one on a Friday. It's a keep busy card. The guys that should win probably will win. So everything Justin said, I agree with.
Excellent. Gonna have a Pro Box card, and I think the main event has changed because they do own a boxing scene, and it's not listed, which is a shame. It was Nicholas Flaws and Gabriel Maestre, which I was really looking forward to, but it's not on there anymore. I'm gonna have Maikwan Williams against Antonio Moran. Maikwan Williams is 22-0-2. He really needs to get going. Then Ricardo Salas Rodriguez against Kent Cruz. That's a reasonably interesting fight as well. Gio Lopez against Rene Alvarado, undefeated guy against a dude with a heck of a lot of experience on there. So anyhow, that should be a decent card from Pro Box on Saturday. Then from Australia, I don't know if it's in the morning, if it's the next day. All this stuff gets confusing. Gonna have Tim Tszyu against Joey Spencer down there, and I think they probably picked the right opponent for Tszyu's comeback. Joey Spencer, not the most impressive fighter of the bunch by any stretch, and coming off fights against Fedora and then Murtazaliev, who absolutely just fucking obliterated him in 3 rounds. He needs something with a soft touch with maybe not a terrible record. So there you go. 19-1, Joey Spencer. It is. Any thoughts on this card there, Des?
No, I can't help you on this one, Matty. I don't know much about it.
It's just, yeah, I mean, it's just Tszyu and Spencer. I'm looking through the rest on it. There's nothing that, I mean, there's always some random fight on these Australian cards that ends up being pretty damn good, just because I think they're out of their fucking minds down there.
We spoke about Tszyu last week, and I expect Tszyu to win. This is his opportunity to come back, and I think if Murtazaliev can have a really good 18 months, we can bring Tszyu back to a level. I think the Murtazaliev and the Fedora result might not hurt Tszyu, depending on how they go and crack on. I think Fedora's proven is an exciting, intriguing fighter at world level, and I think Murtazaliev is going to be an absolute monster at 154. So, looking at the way their careers run parallel alongside Tszyu's, I don't think they're going to hurt him. But Tszyu has to have a really good 18 months. So I think this is a comeback fight for Tszyu. But I don't think the rest of the card is overly exciting and tells us much. But the Tszyu one's interesting. But I think he will be the start of a really exciting 18 months for him, where he has to go and turn it around now.
Yeah, he needs a good boost of confidence. And I think going home and taking on Joey Spencer, who I don't want to say he's a no-hoper in this position, but I've seen nothing from him to suggest that they're on the same level.
No.
Tszyu's going to be bigger, stronger, harder puncher.
Spencer's handpicked because you remember Spencer was one of the PBC white boys they were pushing. I don't know if you remember
him and Vito Milnicki were the two guys.
Those were the. That's the best way to put it. PBC was like, you know what? Let's try to get some white fans in. And they went out and they tried to, so they pushed Bill Nicky because they're both from that New York, New Jersey area, and neither one of them are that good. Spencer is going to make Tszyu look good. That's what the hope is. But honestly, I've seen Spencer fight enough that if Tszyu really has dropped, it's going to be a hard fight. Spencer does have enough. It's not going to be a wipeout. Spencer does have enough where he's going to give Tszyu some issues if Tszyu has really dropped off. If Tszyu is like, if there's something there, and maybe he hit his level, and maybe he got that last fight did crack him, and he's just not the same guy anymore. Spencer could easily make this a really hard fight on him. So it won't be a complete whitewash, but it could be a whole lot harder than people think it's going to be.
I honestly think if he doesn't, this is just my opinion, but I think if he doesn't emphatically take out Spencer in 7 or 8 rounds, and he's kind of laboring to a victory, I think you can basically stick a fork in him. That's just my opinion.
You can. That's what I'm saying. Spencer has enough that if Tszyu is really dropped off, you're right. He can easily go. He could give him the rounds, and that's just going to look bad.
But if on the other side, we have spoke so much about Tszyu on this pod over the years, but if Tszyu looks really good against Spencer and Murtazaliev and Fundora, knowing what we already know, and if they go on to have a really good 2025, and Tszyu has a win in 2025, coming into 2026, does getting beat by Murtazaliev and getting beat by Fundora, does it really hurt Tszyu? Much like Michaela Mayer losing to Baumgardner and losing to Natasha Jonas, seeing what she's doing now, it hasn't hurt her, is it? Do you think Tszyu can come back from this in the next 12 months? In respects, also to see how Murtazaliev and Fundora are getting on.
Yeah, I think because I thought the Fundora fight was close, and I do believe, I'll say this 100 times, if he hadn't got cut so early, he'd have beat Fundora. There's no, because he was doing what he wanted to do. If people go back and watch that fight, Tim Tszyu was doing kind of what he wanted to do the first couple of rounds until that nasty cut, and then everything changed.
Yeah, and it was just like, to be fair, if his corner would have pulled him out, he probably would have won on the Ennis. But his fighting spirit and what it did is, I think, taking that L when he went in there with Murtazaliev, he thought he went in there with something to prove, and he was going to stand there, trade, and just knock over this fucking tank and reassert himself.
That was bad. That was bad
man shit. And it was. Oh yeah, and I mean, and it just didn't work because Murtazaliev just beat the shit out of him, and he didn't have to do much. He just had to time that left hook, and he would just drop him so heavily. It was, Tszyu needs his confidence back, but what I fear for him, and just my opinion, is I think if he becomes too focused on defense, there's nothing about Tim Tszyu that would make him a threat to any of the top guys at 154. He has to be a bit of that throw caution to the wind and throw punches guy to be what he is that's actually dangerous in the ring.
I agree.
Sure. Yeah. Anyways, if you guys don't have anything else, we covered a whole lot of ground there. There's plenty to watch, and the month of April is going to be good. Perfect. Well, for Justin and Dez, I've been your host, Matt DiGianaro. We appreciate you folks for joining with us today. Remember, check us out on our Patreon and all the other stuff we got in the notes of the YouTube. The Patreon is patreon.com/Boxing Asylum. Join the fun. But yeah, we will see you folks next week for another edition of Boxing Asylum Nuthouse. Have a fantastic week ahead, folks. Bye-bye. Oh, crap.
We'll never forget.
Yeah, we just got up and
Go to and move!
We want to be honest, yeah?
crying like a little bitch. I've never met a fucking swank that can fight me.
I fell asleep. I fell asleep.
You're a fucking bum, you're a fucking asshole.
Rumpo fucking Steltskin.
But allegedly, Oscar Rivas has failed a test.
7 year ain't it? 7 year ain't it?
I will fucking smash fucking you.
I hope you fucking die.
Be safe.
I love boxing sounds. Simple as that.